Hey everyone, welcome to GMID 21. This is one of those crazy days where you're here, you're there, you're everywhere. We've been tuning in live to other people's events. We're hearing things from Meetings Mean Business Canada. We're talking to folks down at the Hilton Anatole Dallas. We're tuning in around the world for some of the parties. And I am actually late for a date over at the GMID parking lot party where I'm supposed to be hosting a Clubhouse right now. So Ann is going, hey Lindsay, where are you at? Where are you at? What I'm really excited about today though is we've got an amazing set of people who are coming in to just talk about the future of what exactly we're doing in live events from 2021 and beyond. We can all agree that 2020 was a hell of a year, y'all. And you know what? The best part about it is hindsight really is 2020. And come on, no one's made that joke today. But the best part about it is that we're coming to you live. We're trying to get it in, get the conversations going. We've got the chat box happening. We don't care if you do watch this on demand because we know you got lots of places to be, you savvy event planner you. But we are stoked beyond belief to have us joined by Aaron Keplinger, who's going to be talking to Levi Bilbrey, our COO, about the future of AV and what that means for us as live events professionals. So AV tweeps, event profs, tune on in, tell us on the Twitter, tell us on the chat. Let's talk about all the audio visual.
Hey there, I'm Levi with Nifty Method and super excited to have with us today Aaron Keplinger with CTI. Hey Aaron, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Levi. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So we're very curious to learn a little bit more about you and more about CTI. So can you kind of tell us what you do and tell us who CTI is?
Sure. So I am a marketing manager here at Conference Technologies Incorporated. We are based in St. Louis, Missouri, but we have 27 offices nationwide and are constantly growing. So we really are a nationwide company. CTI is an audio-visual company. And what that really means is that we deal with everything that you see and hear whenever you're in a space. That can be broken down. There's a number of facets, but it can really be broken down into a few categories. You have AV integration, which is conference rooms that are all tricked out, your sound systems, that sort of thing. Then you have broadcasting. That isn't really so much like television news broadcasting. It can be a studio, either on site with us or brought into your location. But that's really heavily like game day event experience. So if you were to go to, like here in St. Louis, we have the St. Louis Cardinals. That's the Jumbotron, the Kiss Cam, the streaming to ESPN. And all those things, that's us. And then live events.
Make sure that nobody ever sees me on. Got it.
Correct. All the things that you don't want to be seen on. But once a kiss cam's on you, you have no choice.
Oh gosh.
You know, I mean, you're kissing. Yeah. Well, it's going to happen, you know. And then we have the live events, which is full event production, start to finish. And so that'll include all sorts of things, whether it be video walls, obviously your tech boards, your video capture during the event, and now streaming, live chat, that sort of thing. And so those are our three main branches, and we have other things that fall under that.
Great, and we're literally surrounded by everything you guys are doing. If we can see it, hear it, an AV company like CTI is typically behind it.
We're using it right now.
Yeah, we are, absolutely are. So the future of AV that's a huge question. It covers a ton of stuff, right? So let's get that down into a few sort of smaller questions. So the word hybrid, right? That's a word that we hear a lot lately. It's pretty popular. So when we hear the word hybrid, what does that mean to you guys?
Hybrid, right? We hear this word a lot. Like pivot, I think these are probably going to soon be Fortnite dance moves. Looking forward to that time. But hybrid, in a word, means accessibility, right? I mean, being able to reach more people with what you're doing in the moment. Our whole public has shifted. No one has missed out on that. By now, everybody knows. People have literally moved homes because of the viability of virtual workspaces. And yet at the same time, there's this deep craving for interaction and gathering. And people are trying to figure out how to manage both sides of this. And I really think hybrid is the pathway that connects both sides of that road. And it's not going anywhere. Hybrid's a matter of convenience. It's also a matter of safety for some people. It's really hybrid's here, and it's up to various sectors to determine how they're going to achieve their organization's mission while meeting their clients' needs at the same time. And there's a lot we're figuring out. There's a number of platforms, things that like Zoom and Teams used to be solutions looking for a problem, and now we've given them one. And so we're really looking to get more educated all the time and be able to use them and implement them. But at the same time, it's really exciting because it's a whole new wave of innovation, of opportunities, of creative ways to engage. And so it's just a really exciting, if sometimes challenging, time. And hybrid is going to make it anything that we do more accessible.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so to do that, whether it's, in person or it's hybrid or it's, all virtual, that takes people, that takes experts, and, on the technical side especially. So when you think about AV staffing, what does that look like from a live events perspective?
Right. Well, live events, man, did the bottom drop out of those or what this past year? So I think for everybody involved in live events, you're looking at some scaled back crews. You're looking, in some cases, at skeleton crews, but you're also looking at experts on those crews. So whereas you might have a lot of people and you have to make sure you know who the expert is, right now they're all really well versed in everything they're doing, and they know how to make it happen, how to be effective and efficient. And I think that's probably changed how things are going to move forward, that you're going to have tight crews who are effective and efficient, and less is going to be more in a lot of these situations.
And do you feel like with that, a lot of people over the last 12 months or so, because it's been smaller crews and they've had to do more with less, do you feel like they have used that time to kind of level up their skills and learn some new things and to, make it all work more fluidly that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on. They've out of necessity, and honestly, just the extra time. If people are used to working a lot, if people who are in events are sort of adrenaline junkies, and so they're used to moving and doing a lot of stuff, and they can't have that kind of open boredom space. So they've been really honing their skills, getting really good, and learning new technologies. So moving forward, they're really ready to just sink their teeth into the next season.
Yeah, these events folks, and I am one of them, so I get it. But just the amount of caffeine it takes to keep them running, I'm not sure how that works. But you're right.
We have some right here. Do you need a cup?
Yeah. No, but I like your French press. That's awesome.
Thanks. It's the only way to go.
So the benefit of working with a third party company like yours in this sort of, another word I don't want to use again in 2021, but the new normal. Right? Add that to our list over here of words we don't want to.
Right.
But can you talk us through some of the benefits of working with a company like CTI, given this live, hybrid, and virtual reality that we're all kind of charging into head on and with levels of comfort, but working with experts such as yourselves, what sort of benefits does that give us?
Sure. Well, if you kind of compare this to maybe the Hunger Games, when they all go into the last arena, and you've got your IT people there, you've got your District 3 people who are water. You need all the people from all the districts to really achieve whatever plan it is. In their case, obviously, escape. We're trying to escape this close down that we're in as well. So everybody's got jobs to be done. And you can't be an expert at everything. Not everybody's going to know how to hot wire the arena, and we just need people who know what they're doing. So sorry for the Hunger Games analogy, but just
I like it.
In my mind.
Very accurate. But that's what it's felt like lately.
Right? Yeah. You hire experts to do what they're good at, so that you can do what you're good at. You have a job to be done. You want it to be done well. And that's where you get that partnership and collaboration in. And collaboration is 100% our process. We engage in the process. We design together. We're game planning, working all the way through and executing it in a way that's going to see success, and that you're going to be, whoever we're working with is just really a part the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to have, right? So I call, these AV experts or event experts or anything that's a job that is not mine to do necessarily. Because we've all been in the situation where we've got to figure out how to kind of make it all work. And
Mm-hmm.
we all know multitasking is not really a thing. If you're trying to do
Right.
more than one task at one time, especially if that task is not your sort of bread and butter or your efficiency task or your level of expertise, then you're probably not doing it as well. So having that
Right.
expert there, and I call you guys like my security blanket, but having that there, feels like you're turning that security blanket into more like a Superman cape, right? Like we can do all
Nice.
these
Yeah.
things now. We have the team of experts behind the scenes, and that's really allowing, if we have our specific job to be done, we can focus only on that and not worry about what else might be going on that we don't necessarily know how to handle. So it's awesome to know that we've got folks like you guys behind the scenes making all of that stuff work. So
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah.
to hardwire the arena for sure. So that would not be good for anybody. So thinking about event managers now, and how can event managers communicate and collaborate better with AV professionals in this new environment?
Yeah, I think that is always a really tough one. So often you don't know what you don't know, and so you don't even know to ask the right questions. A lot of it is figuring out what are the important and best questions to ask to get to where you want to go. And so I would say really finding the right people to work with. You find a good event producer, they're going to help get you to the right questions. They already can anticipate some of those. And together, again, that collaboration, working together, you work it through and arrive where everybody's clear and you know where you're getting, and that things are going to go so smooth, no one's going to even know AV was going on.
Right.
So we all know if you have bad AV, you know about it. But if you have great
everybody
AV,
knows
then everyone just had a good time. It's like
Exactly.
at a restaurant. Nobody knows about the kitchen until the food goes wrong. And then all of a sudden everybody knows about the kitchen.
Yep.
So, it's the same thing. You want to know what to ask, but even when you don't, just get with good people who are easy to work with, and you guys get there. And then the more knowledge base you get, the more you know how to guide those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And communication is the key, and you hit it right on there. And I think working with teams, more and more, and becoming more comfortable with, just knowing enough of what's going on and who to contact, right? Like having those,
Yeah.
whether it's on site or on call, sort of point of contacts that just can kind of put you at ease and you're able to communicate. But it's also about, clear communication from the event managers to anybody else that's working, whether it's the live space or the hybrid space, knowing what's expected, right? What do they want
Yeah.
the audience to feel and see and kind of get from that event? I've always thought the more that the AV professionals know about that and they understand the goals and objectives and they're right there with and good partnership, that just brings more to the experience. Because I found that, these AV folks, we often, again, they're like the kitchen, crew that you talked about. We take them for granted. Go in your closet back there and just make the things
Right.
right. The more they know about the objectives, like I said, of the event, the more they can bring to the table and say, well, have you thought about doing it this way?
Exactly.
Solution over there, or we did this one time and it worked really well. So bring them into your conversation, right? I think that's
Collaborate.
that's really
Absolutely.
Absolutely collaborate.
Dialogue.
That's a great point.
And I think
So-
too, to
go
that
ahead.
point, just to add on, I think
Yeah.
really starting to in collaboration cultivate as well those relationships, some worthwhile relationships. There has been a culling of the herd when it comes to businesses in every sector, including this. And find and cultivate good relationships. You find someone who can work with you in multiple venues, then you just keep building that. They become a resource. Even if they're not working on something, you can call them and bounce off, I'm having this issue, or I was thinking about this, and you can really work it through. And that those relationships are going to be key to being comfortable in moving forward in a new space.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just did that earlier today, actually. I had a question about, some audio issues, and I pinged my favorite contact who was happy to give advice, right? And,
Great.
it was quick and easy because there's a relationship already there. It's already established. And I think a lot of people over the last 12 months or so have found that they've had the need to try, this tech or that tech, or maybe a different group or a different third-party vendor. And you're right, there has been, kind of a narrowing down of who's doing this really well and who's obviously standing out. So I would encourage folks, keep looking for solutions that make your whole experience better, and then establish those partnerships and those relationships now. So
That's good advice.
Even if you don't have a need now, you know who to call when something comes up, because especially AV, something always comes up.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
It works until it doesn't.
Oh my gosh, yes. So thinking about CTI and all of these different pieces that we've talked about, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of bring up that maybe we haven't discussed yet, or any questions that you were like, gosh, I wish you would have asked me about that, but I didn't necessarily bring it up?
Well, I think in terms of developing partnerships, finding someone who's got the bandwidth and the history is something I would add to that, that we hadn't really touched on. And that's something I'm very confident about that we have here. I know there are others in the market. But I think that's really important because you don't want to go in. It goes back to just having the right team. You don't want to go in with somebody who's just decided that this is their new COVID career. You want somebody who's going in and really knows what they're doing and spent the last few months honing their expertise because they didn't have anything else they got to do for a little bit. That is something I just would really encourage people to focus on. And then if you have a company that is nationwide, I mean, so many people host and plan events all over the country, and you don't want to have a third party in each different location. You want that one person you can call, go get it done right, in and out. We try to we have this little mantra, fast, fair, flexible. You want somebody who's just going to be there with you and can do all those things, and especially the fast part.
Yes, always the fast part. But the other parts are just equally important because, we were talking before about how, I know CTI is, all over, and they've got coverage, coast to coast and, even globally. So having that partner that is consistent and having those, points of contact within that partner is very valuable because if, we all know that locations are different everywhere you go and solutions are different everywhere you go, right? So having somebody who is that experienced and has coverage, you might be doing a show on the East Coast, but you need some sort of, solution and you've never been there. Having a partner that is well established and has partnerships in that that local area, they just know who to call, who to bring in, who to fix the problem. It just makes it that much easier. So it's very
absolutely, yeah.
So let's kind of bring all this together and think about AV in general. What does, and I know, get out your little crystal ball because I'm going to ask like the hard questions now, but
it's like my magic coffee here.
Coffee counts, absolutely.
Yes.
Stir your coffee, see if you can see into the future. What does the future of AV look like?
Well, I mean, my guess is as good as yours in a lot of ways. I think, on a practical level, it looks like all the things. It looks like video walls, digital signage, live streaming, real-time chats, in-person, hybrid, post-production. I think the importance of that's going to continue to go on the rise. Clients and attendees are not going to, as graciously, I should say, accept a hard stop cancellation of an event. I think moving forward at this point, enough technology has been developed. Entire fields and industries are starting to grow now. Both
another way to do it, right?
Right. And so you really, I do think while we can't tell if there's going to be some type of shutdown again or what, I do think the importance of being multifaceted is part of the future of AV. The ability to pivot, to use our favorite word, and to just adapt. And so the importance of those partnerships so that when you have something in play, you aren't ever hit and stop. Right. You may shift things, you may have to maneuver and say, okay, well, at this point we have to go online, but you don't just hit a hard stop. And so I think the future of AV is having all those elements. I think the other part is really how to connect and make things feel close without actually being close. Right. And I think for some people that particular element may become a permanent attribute for an event. Some people are going to want to get right up on the stage again, but some people are not. And so really being able to have that in mind in future event production, I think is going to be important too. Yeah, but we'll see. Time will tell.
Again, time will tell. Who knows exactly what will happen? But I think the key things you hit on there were right on. Flexibility, adaptability, and then just coming at things from with a different perspective, knowing that, what we thought was the only way to do something before,
Yeah.
we just know is not the truth. And that there are so many smart people out there, and everybody has adapted in their own way, and there's a lot more solutions available to us now. And I think people are now, even more than ever, encouraged to keep discovering and trying new things and connecting in new ways. So Erin, how can we get in touch with you and with CTI? Can you, point us to some websites and some contact information so folks can reach out?
Sure. So if you wanted to reach me directly, you could shoot me an email at ekeplinger@conferencetech.com. You could also catch up with me on LinkedIn at Erin Keplinger or Twitter at Erin Keplinger. But for Conference Technologies, you could go to conferencetech.com and cruise around the website or go straight to live events if that's what you're focused on. You can also connect with us on Facebook at Conference Tech Inc. and on Twitter at CTIAV and Conference Tech Inc. also on LinkedIn. So there's just some ways to connect with us and start any conversations. Be happy to just answer any questions, bounce ideas around, just really open, and honestly, there's a lot of AV nerds here, so they love talking about this. We can all day long shoot the breeze. There's a lot of fun. This is a passion. It's not just a position for people. So, it's a great time to connect, especially as things are gearing back up. People have some space in their own mental bandwidth to just start that collaboration and relational process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Erin, thank you again so much for joining us and chatting about, all things AV and kind of where things are headed and, how CTI can be a resource for folks. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, y'all are catching me multitasking. I'm sitting here, I've been listening to this excellent interview with Erin and Levi. You'll notice we're kind of on opposite ends of the building. So it's like I'm coming over here in my cool outfit and she's there. And so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a quick break and we're gonna pop on over to the GMID parking lot party. And there we're continuing this really fascinating conversation about getting back to meeting safely. We've got people tuning in. And then at 1:15 Central, 12:15, I don't know what it is anymore, 12:15 Mountain and 11:15 Pacific. We're gonna have Jenny McDevitt, DES, join us to talk about the future of live events and what she's thinking is really gonna mean when we get in there and we talk about why we dislike that word hybrid and where we're going. So check it out, we'll be back in a flash. We're going in, we're going live. Come on over to Clubhouse and look at GMID Parking Lot Party. We'll see you in a few. Advocating for all things meetings being business. It's the whole reason we celebrate Global Meetings Industry Day. If you've been joining us from around the world, kind of watching the in-between, taking part at the parking lot party, hitting up at an event at MPI, PCMA, one of the many just community gatherings that's happening in person, IRL, y'all, around the world. We are hearing from people who are watching, talking, safely getting together and having conversations about things that matter. I don't know about you, but where I just came from was fantastic, and it's been one of those most fascinating experiences. So as we were talking internally about setting up what our ongoing programming would look like today, we really did want to just bring in people in and out because we recognize this is one of those days where you want to be everywhere. And I think it's one of the few silver linings from a pandemic is the fact that you can come to so many different events. You can watch it on demand later. You can join us live. So if you're joining later, don't even worry about that. Like, I would love to have you in the chat. I would love to have you going out. But you know what I really want? I want to have these thought-provoking conversations with the people who are going to be joining us. Jenny McDevitt, who's a DES and just a fantastic hottie, is going to be coming in, and she's going to be talking about the future of events. You know, she's working with Reich, the project management company right now, but in the past she's played a variety of roles. So we'll be pulling in here and having her join us from sunny California, talking about the future events. I do want to break down the amazing conversation that's been happening over at the GMID parking lot party. It's been fascinating if you've not joined Clubhouse. I'm actually very new to it. I joined on April Fool's, which Rutger has given me no less of all of the jokes. So, one of the things we were talking out is a topic that I have a lot of personal fascination around as a meeting planner: vaccine passports. Here in the United States, we have a lot of conversations about public privacy rights, what can be federally mandated, what can be done from a state mandated. And one of the things that's been coming out, the state of Florida, which doesn't have a mask mandate, is telling us, we don't also hold by that whole vaccine passport. Kimberly Corman from Meeting Shield has been leading this really fascinating dialogue around what it means to have a vaccine passport, what it means to put it in, what your event marketing can be looking like, how you can take it and share the liability between yourself, between the venue, between the attendees. And that's really kind of one of the pieces that, as we're talking through some of these big picture conversations over here on the Nifty Method live stream, one of the things we wanted to explore was that high level overview. The parking lot party is just like that lobby bar conversation when you go to an in-person event and you're going, okay, well now I want to break it in and get the deets about how you're doing it and why you're doing it. So again, I know I'm so shameless plug today around a parking lot party and why it's there, but we want to come back in and cut really quickly. The reason we're talking so much about that before we bring in the live events is that we want to come in and talk about the Global Events Collective. Last year, this time, we can all agree as an industry, it sucked pretty bad. I remember a friend of mine from the marketing world was talking a lot about how everybody was pretty panicked, but the events industry, the AV industry, pretty much live events in general, what we were thinking about is we're just wandering around kind of in the desert. Everything's on fire and we're just pitifully asking for someone to give us a cheese sandwich. I don't know that it's quite that bad. We've pivoted, everyone hates that word. Through the unprecedented times, we also hate that word. And now we're trying to figure out what the heck hybrid means. But in the meantime, there's been some amazing groups that have been coming up to help us discover what it means to do regulations, liability, event insurance, and yes, tell the stories about the moments that have mattered always before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and then moving forward once we go into a post-pandemic world. So we're going to take a quick moment and we're going to watch a couple minutes about what exactly the Global Events Collective is and how you can get involved as a volunteer, as a donor, as an advocate, as a sponsor, as someone who just has a story to tell. So let's take a minute and see exactly what this Global Events Collective thing is all about.
The Global Events Collective is a nonprofit organization whose aim is to create a global community to share ideas, knowledge, research, and perspectives, all with the goal of promoting the understanding that events and hospitality foster human connection. Every day around the world, we come together to connect for moments that matter. We meet to share ideas, to uplift, to compete, to celebrate, to challenge ideas, to educate, to listen, to sing, to dance, to learn, to change the world, and to connect. To help amplify powerful moments that matter, we are creating a documentary that will explore and reveal stories about life-changing moments, moments of transformation, and the moments that have created communities. Your story matters. Your moments matter. We can't wait to share them. Get involved at globaleventscollective.org by donating, volunteering, or simply sharing your story of the moments that matter to you. Whether you're an advocate, a volunteer, an attendee, a partner, a donor, or a sponsor, the actions you take make a loud statement that events everywhere matter.
Coming back into Nifty Method live stream for GMID 2021, I am tickled pink to welcome my friend and fellow hot mess, Jennifer McDevitt, which is funny because I'm like, it's Jenny in the house.
Yeah, I know, the hot mess house.
So how has your day been going? Because it was funny when we were texting trying to say, let's come on, let's talk about events, let's do all the things. She's sharing that like at home, it feels like the house is on fire. How is your son? Is he doing okay?
He's good. He, ran into an iron bar and chipped his tooth. But, he's 3. This is the other side of life. We have our professional crazy event world, and then we have our crazy not so professional home world. So we just keep going. Troubleshoot it all.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been a really interesting ride, I think, especially trying to balance what's been happening at home, what's been balancing with just everything in general, because it was already nuts when you were trying to travel 50 to 70% beforehand, right? You were having, because you've got small children, I've got small children, and I feel like there's this ongoing conversation about the fact that we were like, let's definitely do all of that, but from home and with zero childcare support, with everything inside of it. And so I don't know how you've been balancing it, but tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world.
So I think, like every event person, a year ago we got hit with a big, bat of, okay, well, live events are changing and it's time to think about where do events go. And I was really fortunate. So I've been doing events for almost 20 years. And so when this all happened, I'd already done some virtual and hybrid events. So this wasn't totally new for me. But it still changes everything that you had planned from the live side. So it's just been one of those years of, let's do some other pieces. Let's, kind of get some other skills updated, and let's just spend some time, kind of building out some other plans. And I've been lucky. I've stayed pretty busy for the last year, but I'm just happen to be from a really techie world. Most of my clients are in tech. So that's been, to my favor.
Yeah, well, tell us what you've been. So, I mean, I've been sitting here just introducing you as like a close personal friend, and we didn't even get into like, who is Jenny McDevitt and why is she important in the scheme of live events? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I appreciate that you think I'm important in live events, but
I think I'm important.
So I started my event career in my it was my 3rd career in life, and it's just my passion and my love. I love people. I studied sociology, so I think that kind of defines why I, am drawn to it. And I think connection's important, and I think that spending, companies figuring out unique ways to build relationships, whether it's from a product or brand perspective to an internal event, which can be about building up teams and so forth. So I've spent most of my career doing every kind of event possible. I've done internal ones. I've done, like the sales kickoffs and the president's clubs, to, the big trade shows where you have, 100 by 100 foot booths, to I've launched companies on the NASDAQ and done product launches around the world. I also lived abroad for a while. So I have various experience with doing events, from living abroad to also just kind of planning them. So I've done all that. And again, most of my world has really been with tech, except for a few say is I've never been somebody who is, you have to have a certification to be good at events. It's not that it's a bad thing, and I have lots of friends who have it. But when this all happened, even though I had a lot of digital event experience, and the DES is digital event strategist, it just made sense to me to get the certification, because as I started talking to clients, I could tell them all about my experience doing virtual events. But the bottom line is, until I had the certification to just hand them, this proof of experience and study of it, it mattered. It became a tool that I could use to just continue to build the work that I was doing. And so I think if people are trying to consider a certification that would have some good feet right now, some sort of digital event certification, and there are a few now. There was one when I decided to do it, but now I think there's 3, and I think it can be great. And it can also, there was a lot I already knew, but some was a great reminder, and to talk about the technology and the different ways, and some of the new terminology with hybrid and live and virtual and semi-live. And there's so many different I think we go down as event people like the strings of different ways to put it together, which has some funny terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were actually talking to Aaron Keplinger from Conference Technology Incorporated earlier today about the future of AV. And we were talking about how there's so many blurred lines between what's an event producer and a digital marketer and a back-of-house live events person and an event manager. And I feel like the 1,700 hats we wore anyways as meetings professionals has just exploded, in addition to everything else. And I know there's been people on our team at Nifty who have the CMP, who have the DES, they've got like the CTE, and like half of these ones I'm like, I don't even know what that is. What is it? Should we get it? How do we get it? Is it paying off for you from an ROI perspective?
So I think the DES one has. At first, people wondered what it was because they didn't know, and now it is kind of a badge of survival through everything that's happened this last year. And I also think it just becomes a tool you can put in your pocket. I may not necessarily go back to all the kind of paper, like the research and things that I did when I was going through it on a regular basis, but it is something I have that I can turn to, and I appreciate that. So I think continue to have your relationships, but digital events, I mean, having some sort of digital or virtual experience isn't going to go anywhere. It's here to stay. You have to embrace it. They will, I think, be hybrid, but I don't think you'll ever go to a conference or a trade show or even team events where they're not going to have an element of virtual, because there's going to be people who can't go, and now they have the ability with more ease to include it.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up an interesting point, because like we were doing live streams before the pandemic. I mean, we helped IMEX, we've helped PCMA, we've helped MPI. I mean, it's like, personally, we've been doing live streams at like an education event in 2009. It was just really rudimentary, and there was a lot of duct tape and baling wire. But, I think that transparency around the fact that people can attend the way they want to attend, the way they're financially able to attend, and really making that rich experience, whether you're physically in the room or in an online room. I hope we don't lose in the future of our events now these curated box experiences. Like, you're no longer, pardon the pun, like the redheaded stepchild if you choose to watch the live stream. There's this full online experience, just as if you were over there at the Marriott or the Convention Center or something like that. So,
and I think, yeah, and I think that, of course, there's the absence of the sitting down next to the random person at lunch and finding out you have a million things in common with them. We don't get that from a virtual experience. As much as we're trying to figure out ways to do it, it's just not the same. It's just more prescriptive. But I do think it's here to stay, and I think it's something that we have to, as event professionals, advise our clients or companies on having. We have to have it be a budget item, and we have to, I was talking to a client actually this week and talking about their budget, and she's like, I never realized how much the virtual piece was, because we included it in production, we had staging, we had all these things, and then going with virtual, you still needed these things. There were still things you had to do, unless it was just a basic Zoom box. And so I think that it won't be as hard to sell it, because there is a piece of it that mixes together, but the technology and the need for good internet and all these other things, they're going to have to be there.
No, I mean, that's a conversation that our next guest coming after this, Tim Albright and I, we have talked about a lot, because, I mean, everybody can get on board with the fact that the Wi-Fi and the bandwidth infrastructure at like 80% of the venues globally just suck. There's no other word for it. I remember when we went to PCMA in 2020, it was one of the very last big live events we did. We with Event Icons, yeah, we were running their live stream, and Moscone had just done the upgrade. And I remember how thrilled we were that you could walk through the building and your phone no longer dropped. Like, it was no longer dark spots in the center of the tech world.
Yeah, and that was probably, I always found that to be the funniest thing of doing anything at Moscone, and just driving around San Francisco. I was like, of all the places in the world, you can't actually connect your phone, like you drop your phone in the middle of a conversation walking down the street of San Francisco. So, let alone the convention center. So yeah, definitely nice to see the improvements at some locations. If venues haven't done that this last year, they're missing an opportunity, because it's going to become a priority for every event planner when choosing a location.
No, and I think you bring up an interesting point, because, one of the questions I wanted to ask is, A, do you even like the word hybrid? Because every event manager I know seems to have a very strong opinion on it. But, as you're exploring hybrid, whether you call it that or not, are you leaning towards venues like the Houston Convention Center, which is building an on-site studio in addition to having that normal ballroom space and the breakout room experience so that you can do live? Or are you doing a more, pre-recorded approach to your virtual events? Like, what is your definition of hybrid, and how are you going to do it once you start doing it?
So it's, I think, anything and everything. I'm going to have situations where you want it live streamed, but I'm always going to have a backup recording, because guess what? I'm an event planner, and I always have a backup for the backup for the backup. So that's always going to exist and be a possibility. Yes, venues that have that ability would be, a priority, but people haven't been traveling. So some of them are going to be like, I want to go to this location, and we're going to make it work, because the people who do go live, I want this experience. So you just take it and you figure it out, and you work with what you have, and you have a backup for your backup.
Now, I love that. It was funny. We were over at the GMID parking lot party earlier today, and I was listening to David Adler and Adrian Seagar, and they were talking about how they think, Adrian's got some real concerns, I think, like all of us do, about when we go back, can we meet safely, and how are we going to do it? And David was talking about how, there's going to be a lot of policing on the part of the event manager, and a lot of people who it's like spring break. Right? Like, we've been set loose from our houses. We're gathering together. For some of us, it's like when we saw each other in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. We were like, humans, we want to hug with this elmo bumping thing is not going to work. So, like, how are you, what are you putting in place? How can we meet safely?
So to some extent, you can't make people not meet on their own and not be able to hug and stuff. I mean, it's going to happen. So you have to have a certain amount of, I can only control what I can control, and accept that. I think being smart about how many people you have in a room, being smart about making sure the place has good ventilation, or doing things outside when you can. Have hand sanitizing stations, hand washing stations. Make sure you have a really great on-site medical space if you do need to address something. If it's a higher risk situation in the next 6 months, still have masks when you're indoors. Still be smart. But as we move through it, make smart decisions. I personally have always liked having a mix of outdoor and indoor events, and I also don't love people sitting on top of each other. My least favorite thing as an event attendee is having to go to the 15th seat in a row of 30 seats and being that one in the middle. Like, that is my least favorite place to have to be. So let's not do that. Let's be smart. Have overflow space. Have monitors outside. Have it live stream so people can watch it on their phone and sit and, do some other things. We have the ability, so let's not minimize that.
No, I mean, if anything dies, I hope it's theater style seating. I have an allergy. It makes me anxious just talking about it. It's like bad buffets where they don't have both sides, I'm just like, why? Why are we doing it to ourselves? So if that's a pandemic fatality for our in-person events execution, I feel like I'm with you on that one, Jenny, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's go back to my question about hybrid. Do you think hybrid is the best way to describe what the heck we're trying to do moving forward?
So I'm actually okay with the word hybrid. It's not a word that bothers me. I think it allows for flexibility as things continue to change and morph. It doesn't put us in a box of semi-live or, virtual this or that. Excuse me. So I'm okay with it. It gives us flexibility. And it allows us to have not just two things. We can have various ways to do it and medians for it.
I like it. So, you've done a lot of global, right? Because you lived in Thailand for 4 years, 5 years. As you're thinking about that and looking at the world as a whole, do you think that we're going to get back to international events, just crisscrossing the globe like we used to anytime soon?
I think that's going to take longer. So, excuse me. I think companies are going to be comfortable with regional, within country, and so forth. I think it's going to take a year to get international again. And I think certain countries will be easier for us to get to and do stuff with. I can see us being like, Japan is very clean oriented, so people might feel more comfortable going there. And then, other places like Thailand, maybe waiting a little longer. So, and variants will play a part in it too. I love South Africa, but right now that's not really a place that anyone's real keen to go to, and I get it. So it'll probably be longer before we go do that.
Yeah, it was something where we had made plans. We were supposed to be running an event in Dubai last year when the World Expo started. And I was actually just booking the hosted buyer program that we're trying to go on in May to go back in. And I know our friends over at Hot Dakamazo just returned from a site visit in Dubai. So I feel like some places are opening back up. They've really got this, a strategy around testing. There's a lot of conversations around vaccine passports and what does that mean, and will people be able to actually police on that? So I think that's a really interesting approach, because I wonder if the enterprise, like you've been talking about, the big corporations, the realism of what they're facing. One of the enterprise planners we were talking to recently, she was like, our CEO is like, we are not going to be the first to market. We are taking an ultra conservative approach, and we're going and we're having in-person events, but it's gonna be 1 or 2 years coming back. And we're hearing the same thing from a number of tech companies, a number of, especially insurance and banking, where that risk mitigation was always very a large portion of their checklist. So I think you're not wrong about the year out, but I guess we'll come back in, because like it was funny when we were doing GMID 2020, we're like, oh, in the fall we're totally gonna see each other again. No worries, we'll check you out in Vegas when we all hit IMAX. So
yeah, and I think this fall there's a good chance that we can, within this country, within the US, definitely start getting to places and seeing people gather. And I have friends who live in Bahrain and Europe, in Portugal and so forth. Some of these countries are still in lockdown. So, and they will go back into lockdown if there's a spike. So you have to keep that in mind if you are planning abroad and you think you're going to do it this year. There, Dubai is safe right now, but guess what? If they have a spike, they will shut it down.
And they might shut it down with you there.
Well, they could. Or this then brings up the whole contractual thing and, what's considered, how do we work this into things? Who takes responsibility if someone gets it? I mean, there's a long list of things that will be, I think, in contracts and part of negotiation that is a whole other conversation that every event planner is going to have to figure out the right verbiage for.
Yeah, because being marketers, being chefs, being nannies, being, just strategists, execution, lawyers. We're totally also lawyers. You're not lawyers. Go find a really good lawyer.
Yeah.
For us, we've been like this with our attorney over the last year when looking at this contract mess.
Yeah, I just, you kind of sit there and you decide, like, what does this, fall under if this happens again, or if it's just a country and not yours? And can it be more of a property contract? Like, can you take it to the same property in another country if it's closed down in one place? And so I don't know. I don't have any answers or ultimate thoughts. I think sometimes I just am like, let's just not go to those countries right now. Like, let's start here. We know how it's working here. We have more control over certain things here. Let's do that.
Yeah, no, no one expects the answers. And I think, again, that's something where, no pun intended, but hindsight is 2020. We were freaking out last year, and rightfully so, in many different ways. But that confidence level that so many event planners have, you could still see it there. And then I feel like by Q3, we were like, oh crap. There's just like this sinking realization. And so I, for one, really like the vulnerability of us as an industry, where we're really transparently talking about it with clients, with each other, with everyone who works and lives and plays inside our ecosystem, that goes, we don't know if this is the right answer, but these are the 7 scenarios we've planned for, because even the redundancy plan of the redundancy plan of the backup plan, like, we're needing all 26 letters of the alphabet at this point.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
So I've got some tactical questions that I want to run down for you in a way where you don't have to be like, oh, I hate them, or oh, I love them. But like, what are the top 3 tech platforms you've been using to produce, to house the event, to pull the stage on for engagement? Just kind of rapid fire out there, pros and cons, and where to find them.
Well, I have to give some shouts to Zoom. I think that in the last year they have really, I've used Zoom for probably 5 years, like it's from some of their early stages. So I have to give them some shout outs. I think they've done a good job at trying to make things easier, and also kind of understand from an event perspective how they can be a good tool. So I think there's a handful of companies. Like I used On24 when I first started doing live streams. There's a lot of competitors out there. I don't think any of them are perfect. I think we hit glitches with all of them.
Yeah.
And so I think it really depends on what it is what's the most important. Like, know your top 3 things. Like, I need to have like a person there to like troubleshoot everything because I don't want any of that. I need to have the ability to have breakout rooms that, multiple ones, and have it really easy for people to get to and so forth. So I think you have to kind of pull those things out, and then other things. And I guess actually I'm enjoying like Clubhouse and some of the new technologies that are really coming out, and how can we use those in other ways? Like, or what are they going to do with their business, and how can we put that at an event? Like, how can we have a Clubhouse breakout room at a live event where there's, thousands of people, and get a private invite to a private thing, and then, I don't know, have a scavenger hunt and have them figure it out and come to a private party, or, whatever it is. Like, what are we going to be able to use it for?
Well, and I like the fact that they've got the closed rooms, and like, I'm so late to the Clubhouse game. I literally joined on like April 1st because we were running like with a global events collective. The board was like, listen, you have to be here. We're doing the things, get on Clubhouse. But we have been we're running the GMID parking lot party over there right now. And I was hosting a room before I came over here, and my God, the conversations, Jenny, like we had a lot of what I would consider really a lot of the thought leaders in the industry who were there really talking about frank truths and just shooting or spilling the tea about like what's happening in all the different places, and the fact that you can do the closed rooms, you can do the public rooms, there's all these dinner activity points. I love that for us because it really has made at least my experience today, because there's no way I can be in 55, MMB, MPI, PCMA, all of the groups. And
Agree.
I'm just catching all the stuff. And so between the Twitter and the Twines and the Clubhouses and then just like straight up live streams and on demand, I'm like, I got this. This is a good way to spend my day to talking about why we love the events industry and others should be a part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's free for now until they figure out the whole ad buy thing. So I'm like, please God, don't figure out the ad buy thing yet.
It'll happen. But I think being on the front end of it, maybe they'll take feedback and understand what's really important for at least different use cases. So I like it. I think you have to try it out, and try out all the different technology. I try out lots of stuff. I try out current things and old things, and blue jeans, and I mean, like all these things. Like, used them, all the. So yeah, you have to be willing to sit back and try it out, and be willing to think about other tech tools that are of value.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that. So when do you think your next like production of an in-person real live event is going to happen?
So I am working on one in the fall, in October. It's small. It's a team internal. They're finally getting their people together from around the country, and so that's the first one that I'm personally working on. And it's I think it's going to continually change. Like right now, it's a very safety-minded approach, but as if everyone in the group is vaccinated, who can be vaccinated, because you do run into people who just are, have reactions to vaccines, can't get vaccinated. So if you've done that with everyone, what are some other ways you can, get everyone together to do fun things that's safe? And so certain things will probably be planned closer to the time of the event. And fortunately, I think venues and everything right now are so excited, or even vendors are so excited to do things. They're willing to work with you.
Yes.
And if you're like, look, I can't make a deposit, I would like you to hold the dates. I'll tell you more when I know more. I've had vendors who are like, no problem. We can sign something 2 months out. So
Yeah. No, I mean, that was something that I just went on 2 different site visits. We went on one in Ohio for a software company, and then we went for another one there when I saw you in Arizona, and saw a couple of properties. And what was fascinating was the staffing situation. I mean, the head chef was running the coffee machine in like the Central Perk. And so that was really great, but it knocked off like an easy talk about how you're going to do the banquet situation while getting coffee. I mean, that was great. But the other thing that was really interesting was like just the overwhelming, not desperation, but definite, sure, we'll do that. And it was so much was in the court of the venues before the pandemic. This whole like role reversal, I was like, oh, thanks, Hyatt, Marriott, Sonesta, Crown Royal friends. We appreciate you and your amazing amount of concessions. And like, you don't want to take advantage of the situation because you know it's been a rough year. But on the other end, it's been a rough year. So
it's on both sides. It's, it's our side too. And I think that the hotels or properties or whomever who are willing to work that much with us, it just builds a stronger relationship. So as those things start dropping away, because they will, you have a relationship with them, and you can have the conversations honestly and be like, well, you're my favorite because you did this for me.
Yeah, no, and I think that again, it goes back to the core of, I mean, what's kept me personally in the industry for 20 plus years. I mean, you and I had no idea who each other was until we randomly got on that plane together and went to Tuscany. And, we meet people at these live events. We run into humans. Like, some of my best friends are from around the world that I've gotten to know simply because of the events industry. So, where can people become friends with you, Jenny? Where can they find you on the Twitter, on the social media, on the LinkedIn, on your website? Give us your email. Give us the places to link up and to find what you've been up to.
Yeah. So on LinkedIn, it's, I think, Jennifer, probably my maiden name's in there, which is Volkmann, V as in Victor, OLCKMANN, McDevitt. And my company's JV Events. The website's like been under construction for about 6 months, so you won't find it. But if you will see that you can email me at jennifer@jv@events.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I think it's all like Jenny V McDevitt, or I've kept the V in there. It's really, I started my business as Jennifer Volkmann. I love that name. It was a fight with my husband to give it up.
But it's an important one because it's your last name too, man.
I know. So yeah, and I am on Twitter. I think I don't do a lot on there. I tell you, it's funny. Like, you can find me on Clubhouse. Like, I'm on Clubhouse. I'll show up on things. I'll be in some of the stuff happening today. If you see me, you can follow me, and I do try to get on there and talk on a few groups, so I have fun with it. And definitely shoot me an email, or send me something on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with folks. And as someone who has my own business, and talking to other event people, if I have stuff, I don't have a team. We've had this discussion. I don't keep a full staff. I hire when I have the right event happening that I want to find the right people for. I'm all about, like, I'm going to create a team that works for that client. So I'm always happy to chat with people and bring them on when I got stuff going on, because we're all in it together.
That's the truth. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for your time, and totally thanks for your patience as we were working out the live events thing, because today, y'all, we are GMID 21ing, and right now we're going to be hanging out, and we're bringing Tim Albright from AV Nation in. Jenny, we're going to see you later, hopefully, over at the GMID parking lot party at the Clubhouse. So we're going to take you off, and we'll come back in. We'll get Tim on here. Thanks again, Jenny. We'll see you. Tim Albright, one of our favorite humans from AV Nation, to kind of talk through live event production and how you can continue to level up your game. Because event prop friends, we know more about switchers, microphones, cameras, green screens, other stuff that name, I still can't pronounce it, and Luke Jordan laughs at me. But you know what? We're gonna be okay because Tim and AV Nation and the AV Tweeps are gonna help us. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. And if Luke Jordan is laughing at you, then we need to do something about that.
Well, he keeps telling me all these great stories of Avixa and how he's going to steal me bottles of liquor. So I figure like it's coming, we're going to figure it out. But Tim, for those who haven't joined one of our webinars where we featured you or caught you on one of your multitudes of podcasts, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to join us today.
So my name is Tim. We started AV Nation 10 years ago. Before that, I was in broadcasting. I fell into the AV industry and just kind of fell in love with it. And so I married kind of my two careers together, broadcasting and AV. And we've covered the industry. We try to do it in an agnostic way. But along the way, we've helped other people that oh, hey, I have an idea. Well, here's how we podcast, right? This is what we do. We don't make any secrets about what we do. The technology we use is a lot of stuff that folks use on a daily and weekly basis. So I'm a big fan of getting, helping people out and making sure that we're all successful. As far as AV Nation is now part of an integrator, Conference Technologies out of St. Louis. And so I help a really great team marketing and that for that team. And, that's kind of where we're at. We sit in some interesting corners of the industry. And I'm joining you because you asked me, and I don't say no to you. So.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I mean, for our event friends, because, what's been one of the best things about our friendship, which is crazy, because when Tim and I first met, it was literally, I think, one of the very last events many of us attended. We were there in Las Colinas at the Four Seasons. We were there for an AV event, but I have learned this whole new vocabulary, even before the pandemic, kind of talking about the way the manufacturers, of which I kind of knew what it was, because like Shure, Rode, kind of a lot of the big players in the industry, Sony, but like integrator, you use that word. What exactly is an integrator, and why does it matter to the events people?
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's one of those words that probably in every industry, there are these words that we all use kind of internally, right? And we expect those that are not in the industry to understand that when we say it. It's you can use the word dealer, you can use the word I almost said integrator again, but these are the folks, these are the smarts and parts that help you take your idea and you're looking for an end result, right? You're looking for a fantastic event. You're looking for seamless and flawless lights and sound and making the people attending your events feel something, right, in their soul, right? You want them to come away with something. We're the company that helps you do that, right? We're the ones who bring in the speakers, who bring in the projectors, who bring in the sound, who have the text, and have the smarts to help you really kind of pull off something remarkable. And so whether you're purchasing equipment, you need help with assessing a room, right? Well, this room has, I don't know, a Barco 3-gun projector from 1979. Probably don't want to use that, right? So, and just for the record, those are the size of Yugos, so they're very, very obvious. But we help you, right, kind of pull off the end result. And we're there along the way, whether you need us for the consulting and assessing, or helping you design a system, or helping you design an event from the tech side, or just bringing all the gear in and saying, let us do it for you.
So one of the things I think is fascinating about that, because as an event manager, especially if you've been focused primarily on just totally the front house, there really is a lot of distinctions where some of us had a foot backstage and out front, where we were kind of managing a lot of the different pieces, but many of us were never really introduced to the back of house crew that was helping kind of make the lights, music, camera, action happen on stage. And so the role of the integrator in particular has been one that, you know, as we've kind of built our own studios at home, as we've kind of pulled in and made it a part of our world, I think we're seeing more and more of those integrators blurring again those lines of conversations around it. And so when you look at it for the next 6, 12, 18 months, I don't think live event production is going to change. I still think we're going to have these weird blurry lines, and in some ways we're not going back. So where do you think live event production is headed? And how can we best prepare from your perspective as an integrator, but also just to use really simple, small, followable words for us event managers who need the clear direction?
Yeah, so I'm going to use, I don't know if this is a phrasing or, I'm going to try to say this, and I've kind of thought about this. A year ago, 2 years ago, right? Because a year ago, you're right, you and I just met, and then we all kind of sat down and had Negronis at our house together for a year. 2 years ago, when you were creating an event and an experience, it was just for those people there, right? The sound and the lights and the order of events, it was just for those people that were in that room. And that was by design. So you could do certain things from an artistic standpoint and from a light and sound and haze and you know, the pipe and drape standpoint. You could create these elements and these illusions. The next 12 months, you have to consider the audience at home. Yes, we are starting to get back, right? And depending on where you are in the country or in the world, the events are going to start coming back, and small, larger and larger groups are going to come together. And so you certainly have to design your events for those people in that room, but you also have to do it for the people who aren't. And that takes a different skill set, right? And it takes a different design. Yes, obviously, we're talking about cameras. Yes, obviously, we're talking about high-speed internet. I'm not trying to be silly here, but that is part of what we're talking about here. But we're also talking about the aesthetics of the room. We're talking about the lighting, right? We're talking about making sure that the sound, it can translate, and the music that you're using can translate down the pipe and being squished by the Googles and then spit out, on whatever device they're streaming on. So that is one element I think that we're going to have to, as an industry, and in conjunction with each other, right? We're going to have to work together, because you have an idea of what you want people to come away with, right? You want them to come away with some sort of feeling or an idea or a call to action. And we're going to have to help you get there. But we're going to have to help both audiences get there with the same, with using the same stage.
So I think that's a really interesting perspective, because, we were facilitating at Untethered, which is Hub's kind of mini design hack before their fall event. And I was in the event marketing room, and one of the things that consistently came up, and there were like 40 people in there at one time, and I would say 90% of the room was like, we hate the word hybrid. The word hybrid is terrible and it's not going to go in. So based on what you just said, which is a fully kind of integrated, unified experience, but with really clear distinctions of at home, in person, weird blurry lines, do you think hybrid's the best way to describe this new event experience that we're running towards, or is it something else?
It's totally a hybrid. That's what it is. It is what it is. It's I'm terribly sorry. I'm a St. Louis. I'm a St. Louis Blues fan. I'm also a Chicago Bears fan. The Chicago Bears stink, by and large, right? They've never had a quality, high-performance quarterback in their history. And my kids will tell you that I don't use the word never very often. It is what it is, though, right? The Bears are not a quarterback-centric football team. It's not why you love them. You love them because they kick ass on the defensive side. That's a hybrid event. It is what it is, right? I don't want to put, dress it up too much. And that's okay. It's okay that it's hybrid. And it's okay that, in a year, somebody is the first person, I don't know who it is, they may be listening or watching. There's going to be somebody that in the next year goes, you know what? This is either too important or too complicated or whatever. this cannot be streamed. This cannot be experienced remotely. This has got to be in person. And somebody's going to make that decision that, you know what, we've done hybrid for X amount of months, and this is not happening, right? This is 100% in person. I'm terribly sorry. And that'll be a wonderful day, right? But until then, yes, this is 100% hybrid.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's important because, you know, we keep talking to our friends at the enterprise, the corporate level, a lot of it, and the word of the day is conservative, conservative, conservative. You know, the really big corporations, no one wants to be first in line or first up against the wall, however you're looking at it, right? But, you know, I was just on an in-person site visit for an event at the end of July. Jenny McDevitt, who just joined us, she's planning an event in October. You know, I know Avixa, the user conference, you know, that's kind of like the annual association for our friends, all of the audio visual. They're planning a big bash in Orlando. And what's the average attendance of that show?
So, a year and a half ago, the last time they held that in North America, it was in Orlando again. They bounced between Orlando and Vegas. That they had attendance of about 40,000 people. Okay. Now, there are two schools of thought, and nobody is going down the middle here. There are people that are just, word on the street is like, it's either going to be the biggest infocom ever, right? Because there's so much pent up demand, not for the products. And I love my manufacturers, and do not misunderstand this. There ain't nobody standing in line to see another black box. That's just not happening. We are standing in line and waiting with bated breath to get back in person with each other so we can have a drink, so we can talk business, so we can communicate, we can connect on a personal level. You know, whether that is, this buddy or that buddy, see, Corey Schaefer, my friend from QSC, she is a 100% a in-person connect with people, type salesperson and business development person. It's either going to be the biggest one ever, or it's going to be the smallest one in 30 years. Right, because companies are not allowing their folks to travel. You look at both Google, Facebook, and Microsoft currently have a travel ban until the 1st of July. Okay,
and that's conservative. I mean, we're talking
that's
to
conservative.
Friends of ours that play in the same software place, and they were like, if we do July 2022, that feels more comfortable just from a liability and, oh dear Lord, what if something goes wrong, super spreader PR crisis.
And yet Microsoft and Google both are bringing their people back in by May, right? So that contrast does not make sense to me, right? So I understand, the travel and there was a higher risk in travel and all that jazz. But as we get more and more vaccines and more vaccinated, that's going to reduce, right? That risk is going to lessen. So Microsoft and Google are both bringing their folks back into the office in May and June, a full month and a half, 2 months before Facebook and Twitter are. So, and I know I'm using the big four kind of tech folks, but these
But I feel like it's a good litmus test for some of the same corporations because everybody's watching. I mean, Microsoft was one of the first ones to come down and saying, we are canceling everything. And then it was just a domino effect last mid-March. And now, again, I feel like we're all kind of paying attention, but now it's those rising from the smaller events that are like, our bottom lines, we can't do this. Our membership associations, we can't do this. Like, this is the lifeblood of why we exist, and it's killing us from a people and a profit perspective. And so how are we kind of mitigating that to get to there, though we know there's liability issues at hand?
Yeah, there is. And so there are a number of shows happening as of right now, and obviously we're in the middle of April here. But residential side of the AV world is an organization called CEDIA, and they have their annual event. And thankfully for them, it's typically happened in the fall, right? It is, as of right now, it's still taking place in person in Indianapolis, the 1st of September. NAB. They were moving their annual show to the fall. Again, that's Vegas, 1st of October. right? You mentioned Avixa. Avixa moved to Infocom, which is their annual commercial AV show, to the end of October. I honestly don't think I'm going to see my wife and kids come the 1st of September until maybe Christmas time, right? I might be that guy driving home on Christmas Eve.
Be on the same trade show plan
Yeah.
rolling through there. I was looking at my calendar and I was like, if this happens, it really will feel like, 2019 versus the 2020, which
all within like 2 months of each other, right?
Because everyone's like, we got to do it before November, but not for the normal reason of before November. Like, because what if the 17th wave hits at that point in time? Yeah. Bless their hearts. Well, let's bring it back around because I know, but I blushed you. I'm sorry.
I love that. Right.
So talk to me a little bit around about, how is production fitting into the world of hybrid? We've talked about it, but let's talk big picture around staffing, budget. Those two issues before we even get into how are we actually going to do the thing once we plan the thing. I know when I was on site, both at the last 2 site visits, the AV team was there, but there weren't a lot of them. And traditionally, most venues don't keep a full AV crew. They're all 1099ers. It's a gig economy out there. So talk to me about staffing, talk to me about budget, and am I gonna just have to cross my fingers and pray for the best?
Get yourself a partner that you trust. Let's start there, right? And I'll explain why in a second. I don't have to tell you this, but just to have it said out loud, the live events industry was gutted last year. Absolutely gutted, right?
Yeah.
It's almost I don't want to use the buggy whip manufacturers from 100 years ago, but it was almost like y'all are out of business at least for the next 12 months, and they were, right, for the vast majority. There was a number of folks who really talented and they leveraged their talents for the virtuals and doing productions and stuff like that, but by and large that industry was gutted, and you had thousands of these professionals who, you're right, they're gig, right? They work this job and they go to the next one. They live like this, right? This is they live job to job. A lot of them did have savings, some of them didn't though, and you're looking at kind of you're sitting here as a 25-year-old woman who's like, I am a sound engineer and I do this, and I don't, I'm just getting started in this industry, or you're a 45-year-old guy who's got 2 kids that he has to feed, right? Along with his wife. These people had to live last year, right? They had to eat, they had to pay their bills, and there was no jobs. And so there's a big portion of that talent that is no longer available, and that's an issue. Now, the companies that either retained their top talent, good on them, right, for finding them stuff to do, and finding them work. And those of you who are gig workers in the live events, good on you for having a savings, and hopefully you're still able to come around. But there is a good chunk of that talent pool that is no longer there, and we have to address that and acknowledge that. What that means is you have talented folks on the high end who were prepared for a down year, right? They're expensive because they've been around forever and a day, right? And then you've got the folks who are green and are going to come back in, or are just starting out. They're not as expensive, but they're also not as experienced, right? So there's a balance here. That's why I say find yourself a partner that you trust that can create that mix with enough seasoned but not too much that you're going to pay out the nose, and enough green but not too much because you don't have the experience to give you a good quality production, and mix the two, and you have a good producer, right? A good tech event producer to kind of manage the production. I think you've got a good solution there. But it all starts with kind of that person, almost like the tech version of you, right? Is what you're looking for, and that person that kind of bring everybody together.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because there's the big players out there, right? There's the PSAVs, which is the Encores, which they goes by both. There's the Freemans of the world. There's the GESs. There's the ones that there's that one producer that you've had for a million years. Like for us, a lot of times, mine's Brant and just Brant Kruger, and that's just who I call because he's really great. But for those last minute things, to your point, people like Brant are just there's a backlog, right? And I pay for the experience, especially because I think that point you made about they're green or haven't gotten the experience. Not only did they not get the normal show experience of just running a sound engineer, an audio engineer, the iMag camera, calling the show, the normal roles you would pay, back a house, this whole world that we're entering into in hybrid, that's something where now if the feed goes down and there's something happening on stage and we're porting it in, it's almost like when the Grammys are happening and you've got 52 screens and you're okay, this is gonna be great, but who's on first and who's going live and who's in charge of this circus? So to me, that executive producer, that technical director, they were already critically important to survival, but now it's please don't leave me. I think you're pretty, I have all the money, and if I don't, I'm gonna go and find it for you. So let's start there. Where do you find these people? Because there's a lot of gig places like Soundings Connect, Happily. You're going online and you're but is this person really good? There's no reviews. And it's kind of hit and miss when you're asking the network because no one wants to tell you or introduce you to their executive producer or technical director because they're ours. You can't have them. So where do we find these humans? How do we find and vet these partners when our normal space is not available to us?
Well, first of all, you need to share. And I somewhat say that jokingly, but not really. This is, I am a big fan of we can all win together, right?
Yeah.
And that's just my personality in general. And you look for them, right? You ask your quite frankly, you ask your clients, what events have they had, what companies or what events have they gone to that are really great from their experience or from their perspective. But also reach out, right? I would start personally with commercial integrators, right? Because a lot of them do have live events arms, right? Conference Technologies is one of them.
Name for us your top 5, 6 commercial integrators, so that there's we defined integrator earlier in the show, but what's a commercial, who is a commercial integrator we should check into?
So obviously my boss, the company I work for is Conference Technologies. They're in 26 locations, right? So conferencetech.com is their website, and they can service, pretty much, a live event in there. You also have AVI Systems, again, multiple locations. Diversified. I don't know that Diversified has a live event section, but I don't know that they don't. So again, multiple locations, and these are companies that are, the top tier, live events folks, throughout the country. AVI SPL is the biggest, AV integrator in the world, just by sheer, revenue. And find that out from SCN, System Contractor News. So these are folks that you would look up their name, you would look up their reviews, you would look, ask folks who has worked for them first of all, and also worked with them, right? Finding somebody that has done a gig with another company is incredibly eye-opening and revealing to see how they do, not only how they do work, but also how they treat their people and how they treat others.
I like that. And so as you're getting into it, so what are the kinds of questions we should be asking these partners? How do we make sure they're walking their talk?
They certainly look for certifications, right? You look for memberships in certain groups. Alexa is one of them, but certainly, if you are in a union town, IATSE is another one. It again depends on where you're at and whether or not the union is important. I'm not going to comment one way or the other on that. But I live in St. Louis, dude. It is a union town, and you work with the situation you're at. So I have no pros or cons on unions, but it is what it is. And so IATSE is another one. that you might want to take a look at. And then, start asking questions about, how do you do, streaming? How do you, what is your backup plan? I know one of the things that our the CTI team has been working on from the live event standpoint is a backup for internet, right? What is their backup plan if the stream goes down? If the house network goes down, what is your backup plan? And start looking for, if they've done live streams in the last year, they're at least worth talking to. Get copies of those, right? What did those look like? What was the quality of those? And then, quite frankly, it comes down to the relationships that they have and talking with those folks. Because especially without them there, right? This is not something where here's my buddy, Tom, and he does great work. Okay, now go away, Tom. But it's finding those folks that that'll give you their real 2 cents on how they are to work with, right?
And I like that. So seeking the social proof, looking for the certifications. A lot of the executive producers and TDs we've seen, like they've set up Vimeo sites, right? So you can sit there and just watch the shows. Asking for references never hurts. And I don't think we should. The union there is a great point, because they will pretty much tell you the truth, because we're all kind of in this together, because their business took a hit just as much as ours did in some ways, because the crews are out of work, and you can't put a right to work if there's no one there inside the building. I know that red lights campaign that's been running around, where it's like first one out, last one in, because when we talk about, it's not even just meetings and events, right? When it's festivals, when it's the state fair, when it's concerts, when it's Broadway, the NBA's been making it work with pods, but all of these are events. And just the sheer logistics it takes to do all of that and run that, like having someone who comes with the street cred is, I think, a great option. So talk to me about money for a second. And of course, to be, compliant with our friends of the antitrust rules, you don't have to be like, it should cost you X hundred of dollars. But like, what's a reasonable price per hour? What's a good day rate? What's it look like if I want to run a 3-day show and I'm looking for an executive producer, a TD, a master of all things, or a mistress of all things? Hourly rate, day rate, big buckets of time and planning.
So hourly rate, it depends on the city. And I know that I hate it depends. So you're looking between $100 to $250 an hour, right? And the reason I say it depends on the city is it goes back to 2 different things. First of all, cost of living, right? The same show I do in St. Louis is going to cost me a whole heck of a lot more in LA, bottom line, right? Cost of living, cost of renting the space, the cost of living in that city. Second is what we already talked about, and that's the unions, right? If you have a union shop, if you have a union venue, then you have to buy union labor. Union labor does cost more. It just does. Again, not a statement, not a judgment. It is what it is, right? It's hybrid. So that's where you start, and then for a day rate. Well, what's $100 times 8? It's $800. Well, you're probably going to get some sort of discount on that, so $700 for a day rate on that, up to about $2,000 per tech, right? And for somebody who is the executive producer on that, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000 a day. That's the person who oversees everything. And they're worth every penny, quite frankly. I have a lot of respect for those people. I do not want to do what they do. I will pay them all the money. Like you said, I have the money, and if I don't, I'll find it for you, because you are absolutely worth every single dime. One thing I do want to point out, and this actually goes to, you're going to find increases on premiums on certain people. Also look for certifications for safety, right? So These are people who can work in cherry pickers. These are people who can go and run scaffolding. These are people who can run load stars. They're certified to safely fly speakers. They're certified to safely hang lights. And that's a critical point, right? Is to make sure that you're paying for and getting those safe individuals, because the last thing you need is for somebody to get injured or worse on your show.
Well, no, and I think, again, going back to that, it's a hybrid show, because now you're planning 2 separate entities where you have the game plan for the in-person, and you've got to fly the lights, the speakers, everything that comes and makes that beautiful in-house stage experience. And then you've got this beautiful in-house experience there. And I know for some shows we've been discussing, depending on size, like it's almost 2 executive producers that form the dream team for it, because really splitting that focus, like it was already a big bite to pull out, to come in and just produce one show, especially when you're talking multiple breakout rooms, a lot of really big names, a heavy main stage. I mean, just a lot of those moving pieces to get the cut and move the flow. And now you're like, let's do it twice on a 24-hour clock, so our friends from LATAM and APAC and everyone else can come to the party, which, yes, we absolutely want to do, because international travel is probably not going to be a thing for like a year or so, though we are going to get to Barcelona, my friend. It's going to be amazing. But until that day, like, you know, even if you paid them $3,000 a day, there's a lot of executive producers I know that are like, you know, we need to bring a friend. It's not just one crew you're hiring, it's 2, and we do different things. And so really justifying who they are, what they do, who's a backup, what happens if someone gets sick, what happens if someone gets COVID, like the quarantine issues, you know, like there's all of these things that meeting safely takes on multiple connotations. And so I love that you brought that out, because meeting safely was always a concern. You know, that was not like this brand new thing now that there was a pandemic and a global disease. No,
you just have another layer of it, right? And I do want to point one thing out, because I have a dear friend who just did a more than 24-hour event. It was she started in APAC and did 3 separate time zones. When you are talking and you're creating content for those folks, make sure that number one, you've got regional differences. You have you make sure that the people that are you're trying to connect with them, and this is they had a lot of vendors that were regional. Make sure you have those vendors that are speaking and that are their local, at least regional people. I found it fascinating, because I was able to MC the event, and I spoke to manufacturers in Hong Kong, in Beijing, in Brisbane, in I forget the name of the town in India, but all these different folks, and obviously there's the folks here in North America and then parts of Europe, but it was personalized for their region, at least, right? It wasn't a Eurocentric show. It wasn't an American-centric show. It was a global show, but that took effort, and that took work to do it, purposefully.
No, and I think that you bring up another good point there, like that regional difference. We were talking to a friend who, they have lots of clients from a global perspective, and so it's like not only having a regional approach, but having it being done in the different languages. Like if you're going to have it happen in APAC, have an MC who speaks whatever the native tongue is of the primary viewers on there. Have the accessibility issues so that you're providing those translations in a way that's coming through and it's vetting. I mean, that's been something, and leads me into kind of my next question of like, what's your favorite software, hardware, platforms, because everybody's got like 12 we've got in our back pockets. It's taking us like 6 today. Like in order to produce our show, we are using HubSpot, we are using Wirecast, we are using, what else do we have in play here? And Vimeo, right? So there are 3 things in play, plus the Clubhouse conversation and the Twitter stream. And I know for your events, y'all have lots. So tell me, like, what's the tech? What's the platform? Is there one ring to rule them all? And can we afford it?
No, there's not, because they all do different things, right? I use Brightco, which is my video server, and I like that because it's a competitor to Vimeo and to YouTube a little bit, not really, but more of a Vimeo. I can constrain the video stream to a URL, right? So if Nifty.com wanted to, if you and I wanted to do a video show, right, and we only wanted people that could see it on your website, right, well, then we can do that. So there are benefits to that. Now, you pay for that, right, and you pay for the access to that. I love Wirecast. I really, really do. I've gotten to where, it's fantastic, and the quality is incredible. But then you've got the ease of use of Zoom and Teams and the virtual backgrounds that a lot of these don't have. We're trying out, not trying out, we were moving to a platform called Riverside, which Riverside allows you to record locally the audio and video. And when you're done with the recording, it then uploads to the server and then you can download it. But it's an uncompressed audio and video stream. Big fan of that. I'm not going to say cameras are cameras. Cameras are important, right? And microphones are important. My favorite is the one I'm talking to. It's a Shure SM7B, SM7B. But they've got a great new one that's USB, right? And it's called an MB7. The reason that USB part is important is because, well, this requires another piece of gear to get the audio into a computer, right? So there's another piece of gear. With the USB part on the MB7, it doesn't. It just plugs straight into your computer, right?
Yeah.
EV makes a great one as well. EV20 is I guess my second favorite microphone for stuff. I love Sony cameras. Marshall Electronics have got a incredible line of these little itty bitty cameras like this, like 1 inch square. Poly has a really impressive new, it's called a P15. It's a 4K camera. But again, you're gonna pay for these, right? I mean, the P15, which just came out, retails for about $800, but it's a 4K camera, right? And so to have that, and to have that experience, I think, you've got to have the quality. I mean, anybody can go out and buy. You spend $20, $30 on a webcam, quote unquote, right? And you throw it on your computer, and you could do, and it'll have a built-in microphone. It won't be very good, but you'll be able to be heard, sort of,
Yeah. I mean, I remember that webinar we did together back in August or September of last year, and people were like, really, is the $300 microphone worth it? And we unplugged the $300 microphone to use the one inside the computer, and it was a high-end MacBook Pro. It's not like it was inexpensive, and like immediately you could just hear the bottom drop out, and like the whole audience was like, oh, right? And then we plugged in somebody's webcam for one of those really inexpensive mics, kind of the ones that are about the $60, $70 mic, and it improved, but like marginally, and that's being generous, because there was still a lot of static and it was this weird pitch. And then we plugged back in the $300 microphone, and it was like, oh, peace is restored in the hamlet. And that's my favorite thing. If you compare it to a pre-pandemic live event experience, you never noticed the microphones until the audio went bad, and then everybody noticed the microphones. It's here, but like turned up to 11. You can tell when the mic isn't working. You can tell when someone's not on a hard line. There are a lot of things there that it's immediately identifiable. If they've got a crappy camera or something like that, the feed's coming through. We were doing one where I think the feed was coming in from Ireland, and she just couldn't find a drop, and there was no way to get it through. And she spent half of the interview with her head being green. There was nothing we could do about it. It was just the way everything was kind of porting through the systems. And it was an amazing interview. We could hear her perfectly. She just kind of looked like the Blob. So investing in that tech, and whether you as an event manager are carrying your own now, and we're gonna have Tim, kind of like we did last time, he's gonna fill us out a list. He's going to bring us some stuff so that we'll be sending it out. So if you're catching this on demand, you're watching it live, don't worry. We'll get you a list of all the tech he loves with the price points. Or you can check out his blog over at avnation.tv. There are lots of things where you're kind of going in search of like, here's the video cameras we suggest. Here's the lighting kits we suggest. Here are, every bits of pieces of information if you don't have that AV tweep, who is your personal and close friend, to come in to do it. So I think that's always something to kind of go in and keep the conversations going. So I wanted to do a quick time check, because I know we're coming up 2 minutes against the hour. Do you have a hard stop? I know we were running a little bit behind, but I've got like 3 more. You've got a hard stop. Oh, guys, we're gonna bring him back then. So I've got one last question for you then. What should we have asked you, AV person, that we didn't, that you wish every event manager knew going into new normal?
How long will this take? And what I mean by that is don't bring us in the day before you hit the site, right? Bring us when you did site surveys, I think this last week, right? invite 2 or 3 that you trust to those site surveys, right? The first time you go to a space, they should be going to a space, right? For 2 different reasons. First of all, it gives them vision, right? I'm not saying you have to hire all of them. Bring 2 of them at a time. I don't care. Let them hash it out, right? Let them compete for your business. That's great. But it gives them vision of, okay, this is happening in 2 months or 3 months. They can plan then staffing. They can plan equipment, all this other jazz. They can also budget, right?
And you
it
can
gives
budget.
them though, yeah. It also gives them the vision of it for their project management, but also it gives them the ability to honestly, quite frankly, to make your event better from the ground up.
I love that. You know, we are big fans of proactive versus reactive over here at Nifty Method. Tim, tell the folks where everyone they can find you. Where can they check you out to get all of these knowledge bombs online, on the Twitter, on the internet?
Don't follow me on the Twitters. I've been saying that for 10 years, so it works. You can go by LinkedIn, or you can just go by the website, aviation.tv. That's aviation.tv.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much. And thank you again to everyone who's tuned in. We're going to get him off. We're going to come back in. We're going to take a short break. We're going to head over to the GMID parking lot party, and we're going to catch up on what's been happening from a hot tea from experience to see what they're talking about. When I left, it was all about vaccine passports, but I saw from the Twitter there was a hot conversation happening about diversity and inclusion. So there's more to come, more to happen. We've got Scott Drennan, the former head of innovation from Bell Helicopter and Hyundai. He's going to come in and he's going to talk to us about innovation and transformation.
We're back, and I think we've got Scott back with us now. How you doing, Scott?
Great, Levi. How you doing?
We're good, man. And Scott and I have worked together for 4 out of the last 5 years, probably. That we were in a similar place at a similar time. And Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself and your history in the innovation world at large, right? Because I know you've got a rich history with aerospace and defense and aviation technology, engineering, but I know it's even more robust than that. So kind of give us a little bit of a brief history, and then we'll dive into some fun innovation questions here.
Sure. So Scott Drennan, I'm currently the CEO and founder of Drennan Innovation. We are a engineering, leadership, and innovation consulting firm. We like to focus on mobility, and in particular air mobility and the new trends in electric aviation especially as well. But it's more than that, as you said, Levi. I mean, so many things go into helping people think about new technology and new ways of working together. So I'm always careful to make sure that I offer my services for innovation and engineering leadership as well. And that experience for me came from a long career at Bell Helicopter. I've been an aerospace engineer there, specialized in structures, but over the last 10, 12 years or so, started to think more about and play roles in leadership, starting on the 609 program. I was over in Italy as the offsite manager. That was a great challenge. And we'll talk, I'm sure, about cultural differences and what culture plays in terms of how culture plays in terms of innovation. And that was a fun way to start off my leadership career and think about those things. Became, chief engineer and program director of that project, and then a functional director. But, where we started to cross over and work together was when I became the head of innovation there, an advanced concepts team that was not only meant to, again, bring in technology, but change the culture. So you see, there's always this blend of the cultural influence of innovation on your organization, on yourself, and of course what innovation ultimately produces for us all. And that could be something new in whatever field that you're working in, whether it's tech or finance or leadership. So and then after I left Bell, I went for a stint at Hyundai to start up their aerospace division, their advanced air mobility division. And same play again. How do you create something new in the technology space, but bring in a new organization inside an existing and very successful automotive OEM in that case versus the aerospace OEM when we were talking about Bell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, having seen a lot of innovation over, different types of technology and different types of even how teams work together and how you, whether you're working on a product or you're working on showcasing a product and how that kind of looks, there's been a lot of things change over time about how, not just how we build the things, but how we, show them, right? How we show them to potential customers, how we talk about them to our different types of audiences. And one way to do that, and a lot of what we're talking about here today as, Global Meetings Industry Day, is about events in particular. And Scott, you and I have done some badass events together, and I'm very proud of that rich history that we've had over the last several years and doing just some really cool stuff. But I don't want to put any bias in your ear because I do want to ask, what is the best event you've ever attended? And if it's not one of the ones that you and I did together, that's okay. You won't hurt my feelings. But because you've seen a lot of really cool stuff. We talked a little bit about the global experience that you've had. You're very well traveled. You've been to a lot of different events. Some that you have, been on stage speaking a lot. And we joke calling you a futurist here, but it is because you cover so many different technological avenues and that thought leadership in that area, not just where things are going, but how we work together to get there. So then taking that specifically to events, share with us your overall thoughts on events, why they're important, but also what is some of the coolest stuff that you've seen from an attendee or a presenter experience?
Yeah. So I have two categories. So I'll definitely get a chance to lay down that one of my favorites has been us working together at CES. So we'll call that on the big side. But then I also like really well catered intimate events where you can dig down into the details and get to know people, the stakeholders, the clients, the participants in a little deeper way. So I'd love to talk about kind of both of those. When you talk about the bigger.
Let's start with the in-person, one-on-one or small intimate group side, because I know that's a lot of it is, forming relationships. It's, creating very interesting conversations. I've always told my teams, ideas come from everywhere. Don't limit your exposure to potential conversations, even if they're maybe outside your comfort zone or outside of your area of expertise. But I think, you and I are similar in that regard. We find a lot of value in that shared ideas, shared collaboration, or even the education and learning side of attending those types of events is really important. So you share a little bit about those type of events to start with.
Yeah. I think you've talked about innovation and transformation, what they are. When you think about innovation, you've got to have diversity of thought for sure. We always hear that term coming up. But there's also something about depth of thought in innovation. And it's one thing to just kind of superficially throw some ideas out together. But when you embrace one of them a little more closely, you need that time to dive deeper. And if you have an intimate setting, it not only gives you that time, but it gives you that comfort to say, okay, we all know the rule. You never shoot somebody down when they're brainstorming. But that next step, which is what will transform the idea in the innovation to the executed product in the innovation, happens when you start to really open yourself up to that other person or that group of people that are there. And so transformation is so much about awareness and courage and trust. And if you link transformation and innovation together, you can see how a smaller setting, a smaller venue can really help you do it. The other thing is, innovation can get caught in the hype curve so many times, especially in engineering. And we all know engineering is about getting down to the physics and seeing if something can really work. So if you just let it always be about those big events and the ones that really pump the hype curve. Sometimes you don't get down to the real answers about whether something can or can't be done. And that's what innovation is really about. It's the ideation and the execution, the getting it done part. And in between there's a bunch of hard questions. So I think that's why I like some of the intimate places that I've been. I've been to more electric aircraft event that was up in Seattle. That struck me as an intimate event. Been to some of Uber's events that are more close knit and relationship based. Those have been really good. And then we've broken out, kind of segueing into the bigger side. We've broken out some of our bigger events into those moments of touch base with particular clients or thought leaders in the space.
Yeah, and I think that's what you were talking about with from the brainstorming to the execution and those hard questions in between, right? And you and I have been in that in between space a lot together, as have a lot of the teams that you've led and collaborated with over the years. What are a couple of those sort of validation questions? Because you may have a ton of good ideas, but how do you decide if something is worth moving to that sort of next execution column? And regardless of the project, but what are some of the validation tactics that you might recommend to somebody of like what are the hard questions to ask or start with?
Yeah, I think there's I'll start with some categories that I think are super important, because we're all doing this to, usually I'll say 99% of the time you're trying to do it to drive a business forward and drive business success. So if you think about innovation along in the terms of, what's the technology that you're talking about? What is it that it does or answers? What question does it answer? So I'll call that what mission does it accomplish? And then what does it do for customers? So I think if you use those kind of three pieces, you can drive a lot of hard questions just right out of that. So on the technology side, in things that I work on, weight's a big thing. Is it going to be light enough? Is it going to be powerful enough? Is it going to be cost effective related to the technology performance? Then if you spin around that wheel a little bit, you say, well, what mission is it going to address? And where did you get that mission from? Did you invent that mission? Which is okay. Did you get that mission from a customer? And then when you get, roll around customer now, and you can see how they're all interrelated, what did the customer say about it? What do they want this thing to do? Are you being so radical about it because you're a really smart engineer? Or are you being radical about it because the customer asked you to? And if they didn't ask you to, let's tone it down a little bit and do some what feels like not as cool in the innovation speak, but let's do some of the baseline work there to make sure we've got it going. Because innovation has scales, right? New is can be newer and newest, or advanced, more advanced, most advanced. I mean, so you have a lot of room to innovate on different scales, and they're all equally as valuable to answering those questions. That's how I like to do it. I like to.
No, those are great. And you were talking about, should you do it, or are you doing it just because you can or because it looks cool? And that's one of those from an experience design and aesthetic design, which is kind of the side of the house I've always lived on. Sometimes we do design for design's sake. We design for other designers or other people who find things aesthetically pleasing, but we have to back up sometimes and say, okay, does this bring value to the customer experience, right? And that's a really great validation question, so I'm glad you brought that one up. And I promise my line of questioning here has a purpose, because right now we're doing this virtual live event, but there's also in-person live events, and I think that kind of comes to a little bit closer to what you were calling the big stage, or the CES type of events. When you have something that is that big and has that potential for such a big impact and multiple conversations on a really large scale, there are some of our favorites like that because there's just a lot of energy. It's a different type of energy than the intimate conversation energy, because those can get you excited for what you're working on or what someone else is working on. The really big events bring a different type of energy whether it's in person, and those events, it's tough to do not in person, right? CES has changed even this last year, how they were doing their event. And those are going to continue to evolve. But when we think about innovation and events specifically, what live events, whether it's live in person or live like we are right now, why are those important to you?
Yeah, I think you hit it. You hit the word that I put down in my notes as I was thinking about us talking today. It's the energy. So it's funny too, though. The word alive or live. What is the difference between something that's alive and not? Well, a lot of times it's the energy, and there's something about those bigger live events that just change you from, well, that person's thinking about these things to that person's doing these things. So, and again, that relationship of work to energy, geeking out a little bit engineering wise, but it's fun when I see words connect like that and principles connect like that between what you do when you're doing your engineering job and what you're doing when you're out at the events showing people what you do. But it's so related. And energy is the key. Reality is the key too. Innovation for me is not about just ideation. Like I said, it's about execution, making something real. That's what engineering is about. So when you have enough belief in something that you're working on, you take it to one of those bigger shows. Now you're being asked to step up the conversation a notch and create experiences that will translate to the reality that you're working on, back in the workshop or back at the engineering offices. And I think that's the key to the bigger event. So things that you and I have worked on in the past, you could see that happening. We always had something that the audience could engage in, touch, feel, experience, whether that was VR or a physical mock-up or a demonstration. And I think that's what those bigger shows can give you. And also, you just get pumped up during the bigger shows. You've got lots of your competition around. You've got adjacent technologies that you could find yourself partnering with, and people are coming, to kind of take it all in, take that kind of buzz and energy in. But they're also there to find some conversations and opportunities. And you and I used to go to these things. We'd say we need to find customers, partners, and talent. And the big show can really give you all of that because it's
and a big piece of that too. The customers, partners, talent, and I would add inspiration, right? Because you go to get kind of that energy, right? So I remember when back in 2017 when you and I were doing some research on a project, we were looking for what are some other events that we could go to get design ideas or inspiration or that kind of same energy from. And we brought back some great ideas, and not only had a good time as a team thinking about what are the things we're seeing at that event that we could take back and kind of use a similar technology or a new spark of an idea that we got and got to go take that back to our brainstorms and kind of keep that going. So from a live events perspective, live in person, that was very, very important. But I don't know about you, and I'm sure you have, but I've taken the last 12 or so months to explore what live events now do I have access to that maybe I didn't before because of time or conflict or travel or whatever, or especially if two things were going on at once, well, you got to pick one, right? The last year we've seen where maybe you don't have to pick, and I did that with a couple of events that were happening during the same week. I could pop over here and get some inspiration or collaboration or just network, and then attend the sessions I want to, but then hop over here and do something similar at another event. So I know that's been advantageous. And what we've been talking about a little bit today and in previous conversations is over those last 12 months, and speaking of innovation, a lot of people in live events, AV, production tech, a lot of that stuff have taken the time on the front end user, but also the back end development side to really hone their expertise. And I know you've done some of the similar things based on our conversations. about taking some of this time that maybe it's not downtime, but it's different time, right? It feels different.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what we used to call normal. Is that something that you feel like you've taken advantage of and you've seen a lot of people start to do? Because, we're seeing a lot of new solutions kind of come out of the woodwork because people are approaching innovation and events and just technology in general in a very different way. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that continue. And so what are you seeing with that type of thing on your end?
Yeah, I love the thread because, and I think you've matched it perfectly with a really unique moment in time for all of us. And that's, we don't even need to explain it anymore. It's become so much a part of our life. But if you tie it to innovation in the sense that innovation is often like, art or invention, you can't kind of schedule it, right? You have to create the environment in which it thrives and then let it happen. So when you listen to those words and think about what you just said, time is a huge component of innovation and patience in that time.
Yeah.
So when March of last year happened, and you look 1 month prior to that, we were all in the hustle and bustle of everything we're doing. Gosh, you and I were at CES together 2 months prior to that. Yeah. And your mind's going on all the things that you have to execute. Well, suddenly the world stops or slows down for a year, and you start to become introspective, think in different ways. And I'm here to tell you that I think there's a direct correlation to your observation that a lot of new innovations are coming out because people have been given a moment to let it happen, let it percolate, let it marinate, as we would say in innovation circles. And that's so important for people to realize that you have to have the patience with yourself, and hopefully your leadership is giving you the patience too. A lot of times we want innovation to be in this super accelerated flywheel, but the reality is sometimes you just need time to think in order to create and let things come to you. And again, I don't want to make it sound like magic, but it's about creating the environment that innovation thrives in. And I think one of the silver linings of what we've been through after over this entire year is that a portion of that environment's been created, and that is the ability to be self-aware and reflect and let things mature in your mind and with your colleagues in a way that you couldn't do before.
Yeah, absolutely. And by slowing down in some other areas that maybe weren't as available or possible, is given that time to kind of come over and think about that transition, that transformation in those other areas that now we maybe have more bandwidth to innovate and collaborate on. And so my next couple questions I'm going to combine here because it's right in line with what we're talking about. So we think about transformation and innovation. So how can we help folks think about leading transformation and fostering innovation? What type of environment, what type of teams and collaboration and other elements are very important to those two things?
Yeah. Well, if you're a leader, you have to let go, and I think people say that a lot. But innovation, if you're leading innovators that are an innovation team, it's really tough to do because when you've been given that assignment from above, there's expectations on what comes out of that assignment, and then as you look below in your organization, you're asking those folks to create those results. Well, innovation is not about instructing people what to do, giving them a format on what to do, and having control on everything that they do. Just listen to some of the things we've been talking about: patience and time, and bringing down barriers. So as a leader, letting go, bringing down barriers for folks, and trusting in the transformation that's taken place. It's so funny that we try to force it sometimes, but when you look at what human beings are uniquely good at, innovation is certainly one of them. We create new things. We adapt to new situations. That is what it means to be human and what gives us our place in the world and in existence. Well, just remember those things and remember to let it happen in the folks that are on your team, because it turns out most people are very innovative given the chance, with the barrier removed, with some resources provided, and with that safe space. I've been reading a lot about that safe space of innovation, and I think it's a great thing to give folks. It's psychological because innovation, in the sense that it's new, is the place where fear lives. We're afraid usually of new things. We've been, we're instinctively wired to do that because it protects us and our families and whatnot, and it creeps into your psyche. And so then when you're put in this organization that's driven around, overcoming it, the leader's role is to pull down those barriers. As an individual, I like to start with awareness. What are you afraid? Do you have the courage to do this? What ideas do you really have inside of you that need to be brought out onto the table, onto the surface? Because sometimes you as an individual, you're doing a lot of work keeping that stuff down all the time, and you can't let that happen. So you see, it's this relationship between the so-called leaders and the individual contributors. And what you find out by blending those two things together is that everybody's a leader when it comes to innovation, because the unique opportunities that you've had in your life and the unique thoughts and creations that you've made in your life are, in fact, things that you can lead everyone on, because no one else knows what they are.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads right into my next question, which was going to be some of those, barriers to innovation, or, what are some things that are holding people back? And I think you mentioned them all just now. Of, a lot of times it are those they're those in the organization itself, right? Whether it's speed or time to market, or next solution, or whatever that might look like, or just the pressure. There's a lot going on already, and sometimes it is psychological. It's self-inflicted. We hold ourselves back, but everything you just said there was super encouraging, because it is true. And it's within us. And it's, human beings are built that way. They're built to innovate. They're built to find new solutions and evolve in that way. And, just look at all the things around us. Look how over the last 12 months, it didn't stop us, right? Nothing. Yeah. It didn't stop events. It didn't stop innovation. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it spurred it on. Some people had, a harder go of it than others. But I think a lot of people, we found out just how resilient we are. And did we like all of it? No, it's tough, right? And how did we, start to shift things around and think about how the teams work and how we stay connected and how we continue to innovate our products or advance our message and things like that. So, I think a lot of it is the leadership mentality. It is, either being a good leader or making sure that you can, kind of hitch yourself to a good leader that will keep breaking down those barriers for those teams, and keep kind of paving that road and opening up the space for collaboration, whether that's technology or how we do events or how we do any sort of product or service there. So that's a perfect lineup. And so what does success look like, or how do you define success when you're thinking about innovation? Because a lot of times we talk about it as it's iterative or it's cyclical. So a lot of the things that we want to always wrap our heads around is, well, how do we know we did it right, or how do we know it was successful? So what would you have to say to folks who are like, well, how do I know when I'm done, or how do I know if it was successful, or how do I measure success?
Yeah, I think, first thing is, we talked a little bit about it. Innovate. It should be from some idea to something that is executed. That to me is success. And then after that execution takes place, you can measure it against some percentage of return that your business wants you to hit. And I don't want to ignore that part of it either. I mean, sometimes it's so easy to talk about innovation without its relationship to the business culture. And you can't do that because, you're getting support from the business to innovate, and then you're trying to give it back so that the future is secured. So you need to have, some appropriate percent of return on that investment that your business can measure. And there's lots of different ways to do that, whether it's customers or movement along technology readiness curves or just how many patents you're generating. And then the other thing, this is a little tongue in cheek, but I like to measure it if you're upsetting people. Innovation can upset folks inside of established organizations, legacy organizations that have been, executing more than inventing and executing, or ideating and executing. And so that's usually a good sign. But then on the flip side too, I would measure it against, the physics parameters. If you're working in technology, don't let innovation just be an excuse to throw something on paper and say it's got to work because it's here. I can see it on a piece of paper. Engineering is a lot more involved than that. So I think those are good measures. Are you giving, non-interested parties? One of the things we love to do at Trend Innovation is do non-advocate reviews for folks. And I play the tough guy in the room and throw some stones, and it allows people to really ask tough questions about themselves. And you should do that for your own organization as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that litmus test is a really important piece, right? And we do it a lot here at Nifty Method. I've done it in the past when we've worked on projects together. Bring in others who either aren't familiar or aren't involved in the project itself. Get outside opinions. That's one thing that, I know Steve Jobs and other, sort of people who've made these, big technological advancements. But that was one way of thinking was, if I want to find a different way to make a product, I'm not going to ask necessarily the same team that's always done it. Or even though they've been successful, but if I want to make these leaps, right? How can I get other opinions or other sort of thought starters involved? And I'm probably misquoting, but it was a Steve Jobs quote that said, if I want to make a new computer or piece of equipment or a phone, I might ask a musician how would they approach, especially if that might be like an iPod, back in the day when it had to do with music and having access to music, well, why would we ask an engineer necessarily? Maybe asking a musician of how they experience that type of
absolutely
music.
I think that's
whatever
that's something that you and I have experienced on our journey together. I'm an engineer by degree, you're a creative by degree, and when you pull those things together, you just get great results. And it's fun to play with the words and the terms that we use for ourselves. So artists tend to own the word creativity. Lawyers own the word reason. And I try to encourage engineers to own innovation, but that doesn't mean you sit there and separate yourselves from each other. Because if you think about it, hey, artists are innovative and reasonable, and lawyers can be creative and innovative, and engineers can be creative and reasonable. So you take those combinations and you put them together, and that's how great product and great new ideas come forth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's one of the things that we saw it was super effective and really not just collaborative. And we've told this story, hundreds of times, between the two of us, probably you way more than I even, but, having the artists on one side of the table and the engineers on the other side of the table was always really interesting. You describe it as, artists say, what about this? And the engineers immediately say, no, that'll never work. And the engineers are like, well, let's do it this way because we know it'll work. And the artists are saying, yeah, but it's not aesthetically pleasing. It's not beautiful. It's not sexy enough. And we heard all this no back and forth on the table. And you always described it as like, eventually there was this little whisper, down in the corner that said, that might work. I always described it as watching a game of ping pong. Of like, what about this? No. Well, what about this? No. And over time, we saw, and this is another part of my favorite part of those stories, is we saw the artists start to think a little bit more like engineers and start to bring in some of those new learnings from technology, physics, all the mechanical applications and restrictions and rules, and apply that to how they were creating the art. The engineers started to see that, appreciate that, but then they started to push the artists back, right? That says, well, it's not as creative as the last thing you came up with. And they're like, well, I thought you wanted it this way because it wasn't working. And, the engineers became a little bit more artistic with their solutions, and the artists became a little bit more refined and functional with their solutions. And that's when we knew we had something, right? And that's like, okay, whether it becomes this advancement or that innovation or this product or that technology, what we had was a really, really robust team with an iron sharpens iron type of thing, and really getting to some great solutions and great ways of thinking. Scott,
I like that. I'll just play off that for a second if I could. The table analogy. It's so interesting to use that for business organizations, parties, any place you are where there's a table. If things start off with girls on one side, boys on the other, right wing on one side, left wing on the other, snowboarders and on one side, skiers on the other, you've started off in the bad side of the event. And as that table starts to mix together, we start to change chairs. We start to, look over each other's shoulders so that we see from the same place the other person sees. That's when great parties happen, great conversations happen, great organizations happen, and you really get the results that you want. I love the table, because it happens all the time.
It does, and it can be a little uncomfortable at first, right? Like it's like, well, I don't want to sit over there. I don't know those people, and that's why I always hated it when you would go to, they still do it in meetings today, right? But even like back in school, it's like, well, sit at a table where you don't know anybody, and I'm like, I'm not doing that, right? It's uncomfortable, and you're like, I want to be with my people, but you're right. It's pulling people out of their comfort zone and creating that environment. You talk a lot about creating an environment where it's freedom to fail, freedom to experiment, freedom to have those conversations, and you've got all these great mantras when it comes to that stuff, and that's really I've seen it firsthand, but I know it's helped a ton of teams over the years really find those spaces where they can really effectively collaborate, and as a result move forward in a much more impactful way. So Scott, we got a few minutes here, so I was going to ask you, is there anything that maybe you wanted to talk about that we haven't necessarily gotten into that you want to touch on before we kind of wrap up and part ways? Because I know you've got a hard stop.
I did a fun exercise before we started. I looked up when the first time innovation was used as a word, and it turns out it's roughly in the 15th century. And then innovation only got to be the word of the year in 2014. So it's been around for 500 years or so. We've been using it in so many ways. Today it's very popular to just name it for what it is. But it's nice to reflect back on how much it can help, and know that it helps it's such a versatile tool, right? Some of my clients today, they are really successful aerospace folks that have been working in the legacy field, and they want to break into, say, this eVTOL or advanced air mobility market. And it's not just that sometimes they have the technology that can, apply just as soon as it did yesterday, but it's about conversations and how to create those relationships. So there's innovation at all these different levels of what a business truly is, from the human side to the technology side. And that's where I think my leadership is if it's good for anything, it's good for that. I feel like I know how to bring together human teams to look at technology problems and find those hidden synergies there in that relationship. And it can happen at all kinds of different levels. So I think that's probably a good place for me to kind of end it on a good note like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to kind of tee it up too, because I want to let people know how to get in touch with you, because it's not just like, well, if I have an engineering project, or if I have I'm trying to build the next electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, or a hybrid vehicle. We didn't even get into the word hybrid because it means something different to events people than it does to engineers, right? So we'll save that one for our next session together one of these days. So, when people want to get in touch with you, because I know, you're doing more and more on the speaking circuit, you're on several boards, you do a lot of advising when it comes to thinking about, innovation and things like that. So can you let us know and maybe how to reach out and how to find you in all the places and get in touch?
Sure. Well, first call me. I'm kind of old fashioned that way. My phone number is 214-907-1703. And then shoot me an email, jscottdrennan@me.com. Another great way seems like LinkedIn right now is is a good core tool. And I'm working to get a website set up, and that'll be there soon. Hopefully, Levi's going to give me a hand with that as well. And those are the best ways. And look, I'm traveling, so if you need me to come out and sit with you and do a live event, that's in person, I'm willing to do that. But as you can see, with friends like Levi and Nifty thinking about ways to connect people that's not necessarily face to face, we can do it that way too. So reach out in any of those forms, and I'd love to work with you.
So Caldwell team, thank you so much for thank you so much for gathering together with today. Can you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do at Caldwell?
Hey, Lindsay, thank you so much. Great to be on here. We did have a bit of an echo there, just so you know, so I don't know if that came through, but
was that 10-second delay?
Yeah, that was exactly it, John. You sound like a master producer. See, you can tell you've been doing all these online virtual tastings. There's no delay for you, it's just for us. So
there's no delay.
Okay.
Not at all, friend. So tell us about who you are. Are you JFC? What exactly is JFC?
Oh, I'm John Caldwell.
What is JFC? Tell where JFC is, why we're here today.
You want my middle name?
This property. No, not your middle name. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So where is JFC?
Where are we?
Where are we? So we're sitting in our little, what we call our cheese barn, which is our office. And right now, my wife and I are actually hanging out here. It's our younger son took over our main house. He's got a girlfriend now. Anyway, so we run our operation from this great little location. And it's a 123-acre ranch in Napa Valley. Our vineyard is about 60 acres planted. We have a cave, about a 20,000 square foot cave. So it's a big cave with a couple of beautiful little tasting rooms in it. And for us, it's a hell of a lifestyle. For me, it's never been work for about 40 years. Now I got these two assholes to work with. And we have a hell of a good time here. I mean, we just really, I guess, have a pretty good time.
Yeah. All we do is drink.
It's a rough life. Well, so who are these two assholes? Do they have name, or you just like trot them out for appearances?
I guess you better introduce yourself. I forgot your name already.
I am Mario Moreno, and I do sales for Caldwell Vineyards. John kind of threw me a bone about almost 4 years ago, and I still haven't left. Love working for this family. The wines are amazing. The property is amazing. John is a huge legend in Napa Valley because of everything that he brought to the valley. You can probably spend hours and hours just researching Napa Valley, and you probably won't find much about John because he never really liked to be in the limelight up until his wine started getting really good, and his middle name became an F. So.
Cool. My name is Jared Seitzer.
He's the new guy here.
I'm the new guy. I've been here. I've been in the wine business about 18 years. I know Mario's been in it that long. If you reach out, if you want to come by the winery, you might end up talking to me on the phone or via email. But Mario is here on the estate, and often we'll be doing the tastings for you. And I'm here to hospitality on the phone, hospitality through our website, and it's pretty cool. So
yeah, so you call, you make a reservation with them, I host you, and John takes your credit card.
That's right.
That works together. Well, no, it was fun. I remember when we met in person about a month ago, Jared, you actually used to work with one of our favorite nonprofits, Wine to Water. So like it's like this really concentric world that's coming in. But like let's take it back to Caldwell for just a second. So we know that you've got this amazing tasting room, but lately it's been kind of a pain in the ass to get on an airplane and come to Napa. Everybody's locked down, and for most of 2020 there was no travel. So how has Caldwell adapted? You know, how have you changed your MO to bring people in and let them taste these amazing wines, meet your fantastic people, and help John continue to take all of our money?
Well, who wants to talk about how we've adapted?
So
you guys jumped in and changed things quick.
So one thing that, there's a lot of really good wine in Napa Valley, tons and tons. There's approximately 600 wineries, legal wineries, that is. There's a couple other projects out there that are not necessarily in the completely allowed to be hosting people, but it's the thing that sets, I think, wineries apart is that everybody has good wine, and so it's mostly the experience. So it's kind of hard to translate person to person, and thankfully for Zoom and avenues like this have increased the reach that we can have. People people can reach us and get almost a full tasting room experience through a little TV or a computer. We do send the wines, and we do spend quite a bit of time talking about the wines, but mostly it's more about the experience. Get to know John, get to know the winery. The wines speak for themselves, and as much as people love wine, they don't necessarily want to get all geeky into wine lingo, and they just literally prefer the stories, and it's what pretty much sets, I think, wineries apart, specifically Caldwell.
So tell me a little bit about, what's it like? So are you doing, like, you do what, 4 tastings a day, 5 tastings a day? They're all by reservation, and that's in person. So what is it like to do a virtual tasting? Is it tough? If I want to bring a group of 20 in, is it tough to make a reservation? What can my attendees expect when they become participants in your world in this virtual environment?
Well, if they've got good hookup, where you don't have to worry about people muting and unmuting and boy, some of the cameras are terrible. It's just like, if it's nice and clear like you've got, oh shit, it's like we can't hardly get them off in 2 hours. That's how enjoyable it is when everything works. Mario and I had with you when we had to do one on a phone. Yeah. Because the electronics wouldn't.
Oh yeah, we had to do it on the phone. Yeah. Because the voice didn't work anyway. Yeah, but it's at the beginning when John and I did this, we were kind of like a deer on the headlights, right? Because we're more used to being like in person, and if for anybody that's experienced Caldwell, we do a very different tasting than most people. It's extremely unique. Our wines are very serious. The price points are serious, but the experience is not. It is, as casual as you can be when you're drinking $200-$300 bottles of wine. So I like to think that we like to remove the pretentiousness that wine sometimes brings, specifically higher price point wines, and we make it more layman's for anybody to be able to enjoy expensive wine, even if they don't have a great palate.
So
it's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Jared.
Well, I was just going to say, we lost over 400 reservations last year, right, being closed, which is obviously a major impact on a business, right? So pivoting to that virtual has been, like Mario said at the beginning, like a deer in the headlight kind of thing, but what we try to bring is, virtual hospitality, right? So it's personable, it's fun. Like Mario said, the wines really speak for themselves, and John has a lot of stories, so those always help out. But it's about connecting with people. So we do try to have one of the things we've found out. We've done more screens than this, but 25 seems to be really nice. We can interact. We can ask people where they're at, what they're having for dinner while they're trying the wines, what they're pairing it with. We've done more than that, but we seem to have a really nice intimate connection that way. So it's pretty cool. We get to taste wine with people all over the country, or even all over the world. We've done some in England and all over, actually.
It has.
So how does that? Go ahead, John.
Well, it's really shrunk the world. I mean, we have smugglers almost in every state of the United States. By God, they They show up. Some people showed up after 10 years not being here because of the Zoom. That's pretty cool.
Smugglers are our club members, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So you kind of have to tell a backstory, because this is one of my favorite things about John. And to know and talk to him, you wouldn't necessarily get this vibe. But the reason they call him the smuggler, and that one of their wine clubs is a smuggler, is he actually smuggled a bunch of vines from France over the Canadian border. And they, it was a bunch of rootstock, right, guys? Where like in the back of these shoe boxes, he basically ran from the feds across the border, hit them in the barn, and created this whole mystique. And then from there also created just an amazing, palette from Cabernet. You've got this awesome list of varietals. There are so many things from bubbles all the way to Tanat, which I had never heard of before until I came to your vineyard. There's something like, I think Joy was telling me, which is John's wife, 27, 28 wines at any given time someone could partake of, which is great, because from an events perspective, a lot of times people are like, I don't want to drink red wine. I don't want to drink white wine. I only drink bubbles. Doing a tasting with a vineyard as diverse as yours, you really have the opportunity to kind of help set the stage to make everybody feel like they're a part of the experience. So how do we get the wine to them? Like, how did you, in the time when UPS is like, yeah, we don't know if we're going to be able to get you that stuff. How much time does it take from the time that I book an event all the way to getting it over to my mini executives or VIPs doors? And what comes in the magic box that you're sending?
It's a great question. So time frame, I mean, we obviously can do, different types of expedited service, depending on, shipping alcohol is of course a little bit challenging because somebody has to sign for it. Somebody over 21 has to sign for it. So, and there's also, of course, it's temperature. We are very concerned about weather. We try to keep our wine, we try to treat it like produce. So we want to get it to you in perfect condition as we work so hard in the vineyard to make the wine. But timing, at least, I would say at least 2 weeks to get the wine, make sure the wine is in your hands, and then of course let it rest a little bit, and then crack it open for our virtual events. So ideally 2 to 3 weeks. We've definitely done it in shorter amounts of time than that. We can, like I said, use 2-day air, other services, but and of course we have to make sure we have availability, get you scheduled on the calendar. So 3 weeks is really ideal. But we definitely can move more quickly than that. We have, and we've done these events for some really great clients, like Twilio was a really fun corporate one that we did, and each person we sent like 3 bottles of wine to each person, and we cracked those wines open and tasted through them, and John talked his story and told them about how we made the wines. So it's pretty cool.
So from an MC perspective, Mario, is that kind of your role where you're coming in? So a lot of times when I'm putting together, a normal incentive event, we're really kind of plotting who goes where, and I've got my executive coming in. So how does that manage? So like, I don't have to put all of the driving pressure, so it is, in the hands of like my senior vice president who's on camera with you. Is that something like once we come in and we intro you all, you take the reins and just help us have an incredible experience like we did if we saw you in person? Or like, what questions should we be asking when we're putting together the program? Or is there a standardized program that like this is what works when we have you with us for those 25 screens?
Well, I think we have an advantage over probably any other winery. We have 26 different SKUs of wine that we make.
Crazy.
So we have 7 to 8 white wines, including Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Rosé, and sparkling wine, Champagne from France. And we have around 20 red wines. So we literally can cater to absolutely anybody. We have price points anywhere from $50 to $300. So that would also cater to pretty much any price point. I assume people are probably not going to do a virtual tasting with $25 bottles of wine. So, but yeah, we have a huge array of options to use.
Whatever you want.
And even to keep it on the spirits, we also have our very own apple juice, which is bourbon, and tequila in the
No,
works.
you don't have to call it apple juice anymore. It's
Okay,
legal now.
it's bourbon. So we have our own bourbon and tequila. So
and we got
a down
today too. We haven't put this in a legal bottle yet.
That one's not ready yet. So I think, Lindsay, we definitely we handle those things on our side. So it's as simple as, hey, I want these 20 people to join us in this virtual tasting on this date at this time. Here's our budget, or here's what we'd like to do. Maybe we want to focus on Cabernet, or maybe we want to focus on Syrahs. So we can put together a little. I'll come back. Basically, it goes through me. I'll come back and say, hey, here's my suggestions. If you guys like that and the budget makes sense, we try to be as flexible as we can.
Yeah.
And then often what happens is an executive assistant or someone will send me an Excel spreadsheet of their addresses, and that's it. From there, I handle it from there and make sure everything's tracked to you. It delivers, in a timely manner, and we go from there. We crack the bottles, and we give you some recommendations if you'd like to do some pairings, that type of thing. Like, hey, these wines would go well with this. Mario will often say, hey, you know what? I recommend, particularly if it's the big reds, decanting this Cabernet for 3 hours because it's a big, full-bodied style red. You want to give it a little air. So we give you some of those little guidelines and directions, but we really do leave a lot of it up to you once it's in your hands. We want you to enjoy it. If you don't want to open all the bottles, you don't have to. We're going to have a lot of fun either way.
I like that, like the flexibility options. Sorry, my cat senses there is actually wine in the coffee cup, and she insists on joining us. So I have a bottle from when I came to see you last week in Napa. Go, shoo cat. But yeah, I love that you have flexibility, and you said, every event manager's favorite word, an Excel spreadsheet, and don't worry, we'll take care of it. So bless you for that. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is, do you think this is here to stay? John, you were mentioning that people that you haven't seen or talked to and that they haven't come out to the vineyard in 10 years are resurfacing and now becoming, again, a vibrant part of the Caldwell Vineyard family through these virtual tastings. Do you all think virtual's here to stay, or do you think it's going to come back where the majority of the interactions y'all have with your customers are in person?
Do you think it's here to stay?
I kind of think it's here to stay. It's become just along the electronics works so that we come through loud and clear. It's like almost having them right here at the winery. I mean, we get into some discussions that are heavy duty. They're only supposed to be like an hour, hour and a half, and Christ's sake, sometimes it's over 2 hours around this damn thing.
The discussions are almost never about wine.
It's almost never about wine, but everybody is, they get a little buzz on tasting a few wines, and everybody just relaxes and has a great time. Kind of cool. I think it's here to stay.
And I think one of the things that's really cool, Lindsay, is that it's customizable to an extent.
Yeah,
so
you can do whatever you want.
We make a beautiful wine called Rocket Science, and all of a sudden now we're sort of in the space industry. So we've done really cool events with the Astronaut Scholarship Fund, which is really cool. So we send out bottles of wine to their list, and we raise some money for their charity, which is really cool. And then we actually, get a chance to interact with an astronaut. So they bring on a NASA astronaut. We get to talk about. We just did this a few weeks ago. It was awesome.
Yeah,
telling us all the little dirty secrets of NASA.
I learned how to poop on the space station.
I mean,
isn't that cool?
So there you go. That's been really
never
cool.
change, John.
You mentioned Wine to Water. We have, for those that look on some corporate social responsibility with their, events. It's a really cool way to do that. So we actually make a wine that gives back to that charity and provides clean water around the world. So we can get on a conference call or a Zoom call with their CEO, Doc, and John knows him well. We can talk and taste some of that wine together. So there's a lot of different factors that we can do. It's pretty cool.
I like that too because totally flexible because with Wine to Water, doing a filter build now as a corporate social responsibility, it was already a lot of moving parts, but now pulling it into all these different people's houses, not to saying that we don't want to do the filter build because that's still an incredibly worthwhile activity, but if we could do that and send wine at the same time, it's basically doubling the donation in addition to hanging out with some incredible people. So I want to take it back. John, tell me, what is some of the craziest stories? What are like one of your top 1 or 2 favorite stories you've heard during these virtual tastings? You don't talk about wine, and you're talking about poop. What else are you talking about, friend?
Well, these guys will answer that.
I mean, it just strikes me kind of odd that we've done probably 40 Zooms, and the one that he can remember is pooping in space.
I thought that was so cool. You got to learn how to do it because you
got to do it upside down.
And no, remember the one where everybody wanted to try to pee upside down. I thought that was so cool. So they go in there and they just flip themselves over and take a whiz. Gosh,
yeah,
wouldn't that be cool?
And when they go number 2, they got to strap themselves. So
yeah, they got to make sure it doesn't get a floater. That's what I love. What he called it, a floater. Yeah. It was so cool.
You sure you want to ask questions?
What other stories?
I do. Well, no, I mean, because it was like when I was there, we were talking through some of it. And speaking of CSR activities, I heard that one of the corporate teams actually had a running tally unbeknownst to you all. For those that might have figured it out, John and 4 Little Words are kind of like this. And evidently, he was getting kind of salty on the call, but in a fun way.
Yeah, that is true. So what happened is I think I was on with Twilio. And John we'd probably been on 20 minutes, and John had probably dropped the F-bomb probably 4 or 5 times at least. So one of the guys was...
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
He was texting with me through Zoom, and John didn't know it, and said, I'm going to count how many times the F-bomb comes up in this conversation, and however many that is, I'm going to donate to charity. So at the end of it, I was like, that's awesome. We'll match it. We'll donate to charity as well. So at the end of it, I think it was 48 F-bombs you threw out, John. So
$100 went to charity.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a small but mighty number, right? Like every little bit counts. Sticks make piles, piles make all sorts of things. Well, tell us a little bit, because you're obviously a lot of fun to hang out with. How can you keep that entertainment and engagement going? Is it the mix of having all 3 of you on there? Is it something where it's like, ooh, I definitely want to request that one person from the team? What's the secret to having a virtual event or a hybrid event be entertaining?
God.
Well, it's literally we're bringing the winery and the tasting room to your house.
It's so flexible. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's the advantage. The only thing you don't get to see is our beautiful cave and get to taste maybe all 26 wines that we make. I mean, we can if you want to. We'll do a 3-hour Zoom and we'll taste you on 26 of them. But it's kind of hard to compare it to the tasting room, but I think it's as close, unless we get into Star Trek era where you can beam me up to somebody's house. This is as close as we're going to get to tasting rooms. And
I'm working on a hologram. Is that what it is?
Hologram? Yeah, a hologram.
Yeah, hologram. Anyway,
well, tell us a little bit, like, how does... Oh, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
You said it's good that he doesn't have to be there.
I'm just going to have me sitting there, in space.
Kind of like Star Wars, where somebody little pops up and you're talking.
Yeah, they can talk to him. No big deal. I got to have all the stories for them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, so what is the difference between coming in the cave versus coming online? Like how as we're trying to get people back to meeting safely, because you all started doing in-person tastings again when? 3 weeks ago, a month ago, longer than that?
Right after March, right?
Yeah, it was literally 3 weeks ago. We went into the orange, and then they set us back down to the red for about a week, and now we're back into the orange. So it's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we are starting. It's nice. People are coming back to
it's booking up.
People are coming back to Napa Valley, which is great. But we're still booking virtual events as well, because especially like it's a savings for companies as well. They don't have to spend as much money flying to
avenue.
Las Vegas.
I mean, really, we're definitely still going to be the tastings at the cave. I mean, that's just where, that's where we really grow our business. But for like I was saying, people haven't checked in for 10 years. Not everybody can fly around, and by God, what the hell? If we sell a little bit of vino, I'll sit here.
Yeah.
What the heck? Have a lot of fun. 2 hours goes by, and should I go back and have a little tequila and my life's okay? What the hell? Just
All right,
saying.
well, guys, what question should we have asked you? If I'm an event manager and I'm wanting to come talk to Caldwell and I'm saying, I've never heard of you before, because I thought it was interesting when we came out and did our wine tasting with Mario, we were actually in the tasting cave with a couple. One worked, I think it was at SAP, and the other one worked at Amazon. And it was like the friend of the friend network. And like, you're hard to find online. Are you the secret? And that's what makes you awesome? Or is that something where I need to go, like as an event planner, I hit my local CVB up to ask questions? Why is it so tough to get in to see you all in person?
Because good things are hard to get.
Yeah, we only do four a day.
We have an extremely limited permit to host people in the cave. I think I actually look at it as a very good thing that we're kind of hard to find on the internet. I think it kind of weed ourselves out to the bachelorette parties just want to come and kind of drink and whatever. But I think it sets it in a very exclusive type of area.
Yeah, it does.
There's some wineries in Napa that are considered the cult wines, Harlan, Screaming Eagles, things like that. And I would like to think of ourselves as very close to those wineries. We're very sought after. The wines, we have a very limited wine club. We have a limited number of wine club memberships available. We make a very limited amount of wine. And we don't distribute. So unless you actually come experience it or you do a virtual tasting, unless you know somebody that's been to the winery, you will never get to taste our wines. So
from an exclusivity perspective, it's always, for event managers, we're always trying to think of the ungettable get, right? Like, what do we have that no one else has? And I was reminded earlier today by another guest who came on, it's nice to share and to do that and to tell about these fun secrets that we found, just like discovering you. So kind of thinking in, where can we go? Can we find you online? What's the website? How do we book an event with you all?
Well, I think, CaldwellVineyard.com is our website. We're actually updating it right now, so it's going to be really cool in the coming weeks. But CaldwellVineyard.com, you can always give us a call. All our information is on there. You can always shoot me an email, and I can help you out. Jared at CaldwellVineyard.com. But, one of the things that you mentioned exclusivity, and we certainly have that. One of the really cool things that we do, I've been in the business, like I said, about 18 years, is that, and I don't really know of any other winery that does this, we actually have a private barrel program. We keep that very exclusive just for our club members. So you can actually, if you're a club member, you can come and actually do a blending seminar with our winemaker and with John. We do a whole day event, and then you can actually create your own barrel of Cabernet. Well, now we've taken that virtually, and we are offering it. It is available, very limited, but it is available for corporate gifting and that type of thing. So you can actually create your own bottle of wine with your company logo. I mean, and do a virtual blending with our winemaker and with John. We send you little samples and you make your barrel. We've done a few of those.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
You get your own 23 cases of wine.
Yeah, 288 bottles.
That's
of
like
wine.
the ultimate giveaway right there. I love that. That's something that's really magical, because usually the swag you leave events, it's like a notebook, or if they're feeling fancy, they're going to get you a nice leather bag or something that's really the cool pair of sunglasses. But I wouldn't say no to walking away with my very own barrel of wine for that kind of experience, especially if I got to kind of walk through it, because then eventually, once we're in, we can come back and see the vineyard in action when we can start to travel again. So that's really something special.
Yeah, it's incredibly unique, and it's something like we've seen it with like team building exercises, where you can actually you're making your own wine with our winemaker. You're getting incredible fruit.
You're a winemaker you're a winery for a day.
Yeah.
One day, one barrel.
So you get to do that, and then you can give it out to your employees as like, hey guys, you got an awesome job. Your sales team did a killer job this year. Here's a bottle of wine. Or for your clients, like your corporate gifting, we do specialize in corporate gifting. Send in wine for the holidays or throughout the year. So it's really cool.
Well, what's the one thing I should have asked you, but I haven't yet? What's the one thing, if you want us to remember about Caldwell when we're leaving, around entertainment, engagement, excitement, and just plain fun?
Well, it's definitely the most unique tasting in Napa. Hopefully you're not easily offended, because there's a few curse words that fly every couple minutes in the tasting room. But it's extremely unique. I've worked at 5-6 different wineries in Napa, and nothing's even close to what we do here. I guess a couple things that I guess you haven't asked or whatever is just tell us when and we'll be there.
I love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for making time today and coming and sharing these thoughts around it. Thank you for telling us about new and different ways, because we're always still trying to one-up our game, even when we can get back to only meeting in person. Like John said, we believe you here at Nifty Method. We think that, virtual is here to stay. Your new friends, go ahead and check them out at caldwellvineyard.com. Shoot Jared an email at jared@caldwellvineyard.com. And we're going to come back. We've got to wrap it up. What we're heading out for here is we're going to jump over and finish our day out strong over at the GMID parking lot party, catch up on all the other GMID events that have been happening around the world today. It's been a 2-day marathon with nothing but why meetings mean business, why meetings are fun, and really and truly why being event planner still remains to being one of the best jobs you can have. So if you've tuned in or if you're catching this up when you're watching on demand, folks, we appreciate you. We think that you're doing an amazing job. If you're still hunting for a job, check out something like Soundings Connect, happily.io. There's a lot of options out there. If you're working gig economy, we see you and we think you're rocking the socks off. And for those of us who've made it through 2020 and coming into 2021, at this point, they didn't fire you, right? You are still there. You are still taking chances. I kind of want to go back to what Scott was saying earlier today. Innovation in our world is like being invited to that dinner party. You start out in these chairs and then you just move around. And what can happen but great conversation and great ideas? And if that's not the reason that we continue to think up, design, work together, collaborate, create, and execute beautiful, amazing moments that matter from a festival perspective, from a corporate event perspective, from a Broadway play to an incentive meeting, friends, I don't know what is. This is Lindsay from Nifty Method signing off and saying thank you. We'll see you next year, GMID. Have a great day, and we'll see you over at the Clubhouse for more GMID parking lot parties. Talk to you soon.
Global Events Collective is a nonprofit organization whose aim is to create a global community to share ideas, knowledge, research, and perspectives, all with the goal of promoting the understanding that events and hospitality foster human connection. Every day around the world, we come together to connect for moments that matter. We meet to share ideas, to uplift, to compete, to celebrate, to challenge ideas, to educate, to help, to advocate, to hack for good, to entertain, to play, to listen, to sing, to dance, to learn, to change the world, and to connect. To help amplify powerful moments that matter, we are creating a documentary that will explore and reveal stories about life-changing moments, moments of transformation, and the moments that have created communities. Your story matters. Your moments matter. We can't wait to share them. Get involved at globaleventscollective.org by donating, volunteering, or simply sharing your story of the moments that matter to you. Whether you're an advocate, a volunteer, an attendee, a partner, a donor, or a sponsor, the actions you take make a loud statement that events everywhere matter.